coronavirus crisis in accordance with the Governor Sununu's Emergency Order Number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04. This board is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to the meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the Governor's emergency order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, this is to confirm that we are utilizing Microsoft Teams for this electronic meeting. All members of the board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through the Microsoft Teams, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in the meeting through dialing the following phone number. And if you're here, it's 1-929-338-4464 or the link through Teams. First, I'll announce the members that we have, and if you can just acknowledge you're on the call. Myself, James Jennison. We have Jeff Brand.
Present.
Steve Diamond.
He's must be muted, or he's not. He can't hear. Let's see.
Yeah.
He's there.
There it is. And I muted him. Sorry.
All right. Steve Diamond, Donna Masucci.
Here.
And Ron Allard.
Present.
We are in the order of, in the interest of time, we're going to move the minutes review to the end of the agenda and start right in with the regular business so we can try to get through stuff. First up, we have 220-54.1 and 54-7.2, Albert Estes, Mills Falls Realty, LLC. And I believe, Mr. Estes, you are asking for a continuance. Do we have Mr. Estes, you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me, Jamie?
I can very well.
I am asking
To continue to June 2nd.
Yes, I did.
All right. And go ahead. I'm sorry.
I am asking for the continuous, Jamie, simply because of the coronavirus pandemic. We just are almost there, but we couldn't get everything set for the June 2nd meeting.
Sure, I understand. Do the board members have any questions?
I have a question, Jamie.
And you, that's Marcia speaking, correct? Yes, go ahead, Marcia.
Yeah. Al, do you have any idea where you stand with your state permits, the alteration of terrain? Have you submitted, or do you know when it's going to be submitted?
Well, what I did, Marcia, is I gave Bob Stoll, Tritech Engineering, the check to send to the state, and I signed it, and I really don't know. I got stuck down here in Florida through the pandemic, and I haven't been able to get back. I don't know where it is, and this stage with him, I've tried contacting him a couple of times, but the office is hard to reach. I don't know if they're in or what.
All right, I was just, because I was wondering about that, and because it has bearings on, what the board decides to do, whether they're going to want to have Du Bois and King look at your application too, or just go with the state where you have to do an alteration of terrain. I just wanted to bring that up because I guess it would be something that the board would want to talk about at the next meeting.
Okay.
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 Does the board, any of the members of the board have any other questions before we ask for a motion to continue? Hearing none, if we entertain a motion to continue to June 2nd. Pardon me?
Makes a motion to continue this case until June 2nd.
I second that.
Donna Masucci, second. Vote. We'll start with Steve.
Diamond eye.
Bran.
Bran eye.
Allard.
Allard, aye.
Masucci,
Masucci, aye.
and Janice and I. We will see you June 2nd.
Thank you very, very much, and I hope you all stay safe and healthy up there.
Thank you. All right.
Who can hear? No.
Is now exiting.
Design review continued from April 7th. Waldron Haley Revocable Trust. Request for applicant to subdivide and leave 8 acres for the owner and 21 acres to be developed into a multifamily development. And that we have member here to present.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Scott Cole from Beals Associates is here. Can you hear me?
How you doing, Scott? Yes, we can.
Good. All right, if we're ready to roll. So this evening for design review for, I'm referencing to J&L Terra Holdings, just to give the board a little background history. These are 2 clients I've worked with in the past and have worked in the town. Jason and Lou actually finished the remaining phase in Village Place. So they have worked in town before. So J&L Terra Holdings is looking at a piece of land currently available on Route 9. Hopefully everybody has a copy of the plan in front of them. This particular piece is 21 acres, and in its parent parcel form actually has frontage along Route 9 as well as Route 125. As I said, it's derived of 21 acres with roughly a half acre of a wetland feature, pretty close to the midpoint of the property. What I did on the plan is I provided a somewhat larger scale locus on the bottom left of the plan that shows the perimeter parcel. The proposal is the owner would like to maintain and keep ownership of the land adjacent to Route 125. So the client is looking at subdividing off 8 acres for the owner and developing 21 acres along the Route 9 side. This is in the Village District, and they are looking at a multifamily development, as you can see. The proposal in front of you would be with private roads and with 84 units. The way we derive that is based on calculations within the zoning regs based on land area. The proposal would consist of a main thorough road, roughly 500 feet long or 580. That would be the main road in and out of the development. It would be 24 feet wide with a hammerhead at the end of it. And then spurring on and off of that to reduce the cuts onto the road would be more or less a private loop driveway. The units themselves are structured 21 units, which would be 4 units per building. The units would have either 1 or 2 garage space, depending on if they were inside units or outside units. The development would be proposed to be on a community well, which would probably be out back of the parcel, and community septic systems more than likely broke up into a couple places. I did have a preliminary meeting with Rick Walker, the fire chief, on the necessity needs for fire protection. In doing so, we have proposed a 30,000-gallon fire cistern, basically located in the midpoint of the development, basically 3/4 of the way down the road. In addition to this design aspects, we have also proposed a mail kiosk. We know that would be required in the current regulations with the mail people, so we have added that to the front of the job. Again, this is just a preliminary design. There's a number of units, and we wanted to bring it before the board to get their feeling on it and any commentary they may have. We did receive a letter prior to the previous planning board meeting from one of the abutters, and I did respond to those comments with a letter, and I'll wait to hear the board if they want me to address those now or wait till we have a butter comment. But basically, we just want to try to give the board an opportunity to see the job before going further. That's all I have at this time.
Thank you. Struggling to unmute my mic. Does the board have any questions? I'm sure they do.
I have a question.
Okay, Mr. Diamond?
Is there the possibility that doesn't necessarily have to be implemented immediately, but is it possible to reserve the potential for connectivity to 125?
I would have to, I don't know myself. I guess I would have to ask the owner in the requirements they have on their purchase and sales. The way I understood it was they didn't want through connection. They want to save that for their own right to develop later.
All right, and another separate topic. Is there going to be any sort of green space, lawn, picnic table type of thing anywhere on the property?
Well, that's certainly up for discussion of the board. If you look at the plan, basically behind the units, there's roughly going to be a large open space component of 13 acres. Where the development is proposed has been logged in the past, so it's roughly open, or the valuable hardwood has been removed. We do see that, as you can see, roughly in the middle of the units there's a very large, what would probably be a green common or a lawn area or play area or something to that nature in there. And that'll be some, notes that we can discuss with the board if they see anything else.
Based on that layout, does that represent full development of that parcel of land?
Based on the unit calculation, yes.
So the space beyond what's denoted as like a little wetland area there, that would not have potential future development potential? Right.
No, as you can see in the blow up on the left, behind that wetland is still another, probably 12 acres of upland that is decent area.
And so that's not in the calculation for what you're proposing in the front?
It is, but it would be open space in perpetuity. It wouldn't be developed.
All right.
So what a couple of questions. One, talk about how you would buffer this area vegetatively from both Route 9 and from the adjoining lots. And also, what kind of design for the building did you have in mind?
Buffering right now, I believe the proposal was just to leave the existing mature vegetation to as much as possible. I know along Route 9 there, we have added the required landscape buffer. So anything that is there now, and I know other than a log road opening, that is vegetated up front. So that would remain. And then again, this is preliminary, so we haven't really gotten into details of any added landscaping or anything like that. Right now, there's roughly on the east side of butter. I know there's a question as to how close the buildings were. On the sideline area there, from the building to the side property line, I believe was roughly 45 feet. And I had put that in the response letter. And to the rear of his property line, the closest building would be 70 feet. On the opposite side, on the west side of the parcel, those buildings are roughly, I think, 35 feet to the property line. within the building setback. And again, there is some existing vegetation there. We haven't looked at any other proposed landscaping yet at this time.
Yeah, James Jennison here. I'm certainly interested in seeing the design of the buildings and what they would look like. I myself was hoping for something a little bit more, something different in that space. I always envision that big piece of land being developed differently than what you're proposing, unfortunately, but that's neither here nor there. Certainly design is going to be important, especially in its proximity to, the center of town. So I'll be interested in seeing what they look like as, facade wise.
Sure.
Do any other board members have any other questions, comments, concerns?
This is Ron L. I have a quick question, couple quick questions. Are these 2-bedroom units?
2-bedroom units with potential of 3.
And when you come off of Route 9, I see these rounded areas of adjacent to the road. Are those sidewalk areas?
Right now, they're landscape or green areas, so people don't back out into the main thorough road. And again, these are kind of preliminary. I have a very abundant amount of parking right now illustrated on this. I would be cutting that back. As I said, some of these will have 1 unit, some will have 2-unit actual garage bays besides the outside parking spaces. So normally when we have ownership of something like that, we'll either put pavers or something to distinguish between driveways and ownership. So it won't be so pavement looking by the time we actually get into better plans.
That brings up, I'm sorry, Ron, if you're done. That brings up another question about sidewalks. I know that was mentioned. And would the board be looking at sidewalks? What would be the expectation for sidewalks, and something to discuss?
Well, I'm thinking there should be sidewalks there that could connect out, because, we've had the discussions. We started over Christmas Dove. We were talking about within the village district, eventually connecting everything via sidewalks. So I would think that this falls within the area where we've discussed that.
Even better, in my view, would be a path of some sort that is a little bit away from the drivable area, like behind the building or otherwise not directly on the road if possible.
So Jamie, my comment would be on that. I think I've noted it in my staff recommendations. I mean, sidewalks are a requirement under the regulations, but my thought would be you would be looking at least internally at this point, so that, like Jeff said, there is something for the state to connect to in the future, because this is right off the town center. My other question is this Hammerhead Road, look, I can see some being problematic. Is the applicant looking for that to be a town road, or are they looking at it as this is their road? It's a private road.
It's proposed to be a private road, Masha. And I did go over that with Rick into the configuration and whatnot. Why do you see it problematic? Because
well, if it was a dead end and you had that many
Unknown participant is now joining.
You had that many parking spaces and you dead ended it, I can see the turning around, the plowing. I can see those all being an issue. If it loops around, I don't see an issue. But having a hammerhead at the end, I just see that as being, a maintenance issue. Now, if the town's not maintaining it, not as big of an issue, but I still look at that as hammerheads are not overall, from what I've understood, popular with maintenance crews.
Mm-hmm.
Got to put snow someplace.
So Scott, does that connect around? I mean, I see you got the hammerhead overlaid over a connecting road.
Disappeared here.
It does. It's actually a very large loop, which I went over with Rick, and he had me change some of the radii on the interior islands. So no service or emergency vehicle would have to change direction. It's a big loop, so they can loop all the way through and around.
Yep.
Originally, the proposal was a public road, and then the client decided to keep it private, so he would have the availability to do maintenance on it themselves with the association. I guess my question would be for Marcia, now that that's the case in this kind of a development, do I even need to show right-of-way lines if it's private?
What kind of lines?
The right-of-way.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Did you say right of way?
Yeah, so the previous proposal in this was to keep that main thorough road a town road. Then the client said that they would like to keep it private. So if it's private, could we just consider the whole thing a driveway and not need the right-of-way shown?
I'd have to look at the regs. I would think you would want a defined right of way though, because things could change.
Okay.
Well, with respect to the designation as a driveway,
Hmm.
our regs say over, if you got 4 or more residences, building serviced by one driveway, it's got to be, built to town standards for a private road anyway.
Yeah, and it's certainly intended to be built to town standards.
Yeah.
I think what Jeff's alluding to is that many houses on a driveway would certainly, I don't know if there'd be much difference between driveway and road regulations at that point.
You would build it as a road, you just wouldn't show the hammerhead in it. So the whole thing would almost be more like a loop road and not a hammerhead in a parking area.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I still think you need some kind of, if you're coming in like that, you want some, I don't know, I would feel comfortable with some meets and bounds on that, but that's up to you.
Another question about the sizing of this. So in the village district, under minimum lot size for multifamily housing, it says you got to have a minimum lot size 80,000 square feet for the first unit, includes 35,000 square feet of contiguous upland area, and each additional dwelling shall require 10,000 square feet of upland area. So you're saying this plan conforms to that regulation?
Yeah, I actually I did the lot area calculations. By the time you subtract your wetlands, you get rid of the 8 acres from the owner, you're left with 21.3, 80,000 for the first unit, leaves you 824,036 square feet. Then you divide that by 10,000. We're actually at 83.5 units.
Okay, which is why you can't develop that upland area on the other side of that small wet area, because then you wouldn't meet the square footage requirements, would you?
Yeah, we couldn't add more units. We could space these out, but that just creates more pavement.
Right. Yeah, so you need that upland area on the other side of that wetland area. You need that area in order to meet.
Unknown participant is now exiting.
Yes, for density, yep.
Yeah. So Jamie, that goes back to your concern before about could that be developed? The answer is no, because the development plan to get the square footage you need for that number of dwellings is got to be left open.
Right.
Yeah, correct.
Jamie and Jeff, this is Ron Allard. Question. Scott just said the calculation comes to 83.5, and we have 84 units here. Can we round up? I think we have to round down, don't we?
It would be preferable.
Yes, I agree.
By his calculations,
He is
he was
now
taking
joining.
out all the wetlands when he did his calculation and then divided by the 80,000, where he only needs 35,000 for the first unit of uplands. So actually, it would actually be over the 85 if you did the calculations of the way our regulations is written.
Well, let's not point that out.
Too late.
All right. So I guess 83 and a half is a good number.
I was wondering, how many people do you believe will be living here? I know that's not an exact thing to say, but it looked like there was about 200 spaces, and you said it would probably be brought down. What idea do you have on number of people?
I couldn't even guess, Steve. I really don't know. I mean, I'm a small unit. It could be one person. It could be an older couple. I couldn't take an average.
Hey, Scott, this is Ron Ella, though. Reducing parking spaces would be an issue for me. In front of these 4-unit buildings, you have 9 spaces. That's two per unit, plus a guest space. Even if it's a one bedroom, if everybody's got 2 cars now. Yeah.
However,
Yeah,
didn't you say these had garages under them?
Well, that's what I was just going to say. Don't forget that I think the last schematic that I saw, the outside units will have 2 bays interior. The interior units will have 1. So per building, you have 6 interior spaces plus all these outside spaces. Based on the regulations right now, for the multi-family, you need 1 unit, 1 per unit plus 1 for every 3 for visitors. So technically on this, I would need a required 112, and I'm proposing 202. So we're way above. But in speaking with Rick, his argument was not everybody uses it as a garage. They fill it with all their belongings and park outside. So, the average should be definitely more than less.
There's one other comment, Scott, James Jennison here, about a mix of housing designs, both for demographics and for curb appeal. Is that something the developer is considering, or are these going to be 20 of the identical units, stacked up?
I can certainly ask. I haven't heard from my client. I don't know if they're on the meeting or not. They did give me a schematic for one they've done in the past. As far as a different shape or not,
Is now exiting.
That becomes more difficult because of the 40-foot front setback. But I can certainly discuss the different alternatives with them.
Yeah, just mixing up roof lines and colors and dormers and things of that nature. Certainly, I think
Right.
to me appeals.
And to piggyback on that, something, I think there needs to be some variance, and also the desire is not to have just rectangular buildings, with a plain facade. If you look at a couple of the newer buildings in town, like when the bank on 125 there, when they remodeled that, you look at not necessarily the lot, but look at the design of with some features on the new gas station that's there. I mean, those kind of have a New England feel, but they have a little bit of character to them without, I think in particular, the gas station, without a large variance in the front of the structures, front to back. So just something that has a little bit of character, New England character in particular, and that's not cookie cutter, not just a bunch of rectangular buildings.
Yeah.
I mean,
No, I understand that.
Yeah, Scott,
Right.
and it was one of my comments too, in regard to the design, just to be cognitive of the fact that, we do have an aging population, and a lot of the folks are looking to downsize or looking to have something that has a master on the first floor, but could still be that, townhouse type of design. And I'd really like them to put some thought into that, because this is right in our town center village district, right in that area that would draw that population.
Yeah, I did. Everybody saw that comment, and they did look at it. I'll have to discuss that, further with them. That when we looked at it with the parking and the building requirements, that 40-foot setback from the road coming in really makes that difficult to have different types of structures.
Yeah, I think it'd be playing with roof lines and floor plans. Floor plans, I think Marsh is speaking to, and roof lines is kind of, I think, the easiest way to manipulate, the look of it. And I want to take an opportunity to circle back to something Steve said earlier. I would like to see, if possible, the way I'm looking at it, interior left-hand side where it touches that 8-acre parcel, a reserved section that if that future owner, because I'm sure the owners of the 8 acres won't develop it, but somebody else will, that a connectivity could be placed there if both participants agree, or that depending on what comes before the board in the future, we may require that they connect to that, that thing, that parking area. It may be in the future things change that we because we've seen it before where it'd be nice to have connectivity and someone left a little space between the two houses for future connectivity. So if that could be placed in there as a little right-of-way type setup for future development of that other piece, I think that would be prudent.
Yeah, no, I think that's good planning. I can certainly talk to the owner and see about that. I think
You might want to look at the other side of the property too.
Yeah, where does that go behind there? Is that the?
It's another large parcel.
Okay. Yeah, so same thing off one of those parking areas over there as well, leaving a spot that there might be some future potential there to link up.
Our best practices do call for frontage roads, so that's great to have that potential.
Well, to take one more step back from there is going back to the buffers again. I know you talked about the front along Route 9, but I think you need to look all the way around. I know you said you want to preserve to the maximum extent possible whatever vegetation is there between this development and the lots around it. However, that you could do that, but you still got to take a look at it and say, is that adequate to give you some kind of sound deadening site, be able to, do some things with sight lines that may not, may exceed what you're going to be left with once you get done developing. So you would need to take a look at that and come back. I guess we're going to, even if you were just only going to do the front area along Route 9 and leave the vegetation, I think we're still going to want to see for that part of the lot that's developed an actual landscape plan. That just came up recently on another project, and
it was a comment from one of the abutters as well, asking about a buffer. So it should probably be considered at this point, when you come forward, that there may be pushback there.
Yeah, we're going to want to see a landscape plan.
Yeah, that's fine. Again, this is preliminary, and this is based on a existing boundary plan. We don't have a surveyed boundary to give me existing conditions so I can see what's there. So when I have more detail, we'll be able to take the plan and go out and look for holes and see what's good and what needs to be, maybe filled in later on.
Yeah, it's just, you're doing this design review so that to glean from us things that we're going to want to see. So I just wanted to note that we'll probably want to see that. So just so you're prepared.
Scott, this is Donna Masucci asking a question about your units. Will they be handicap accessible, or will there be a couple that are designated just for handicap residents?
It's a good question. We haven't really thought about that at this point. For accessibility, I think it would be a good idea maybe to distinguish a couple units that are more prepped for that than others, but we can certainly look at that.
Okay, thank you.
This is sort of what Marcia was getting at as well. She was talking about an aging population, and the best practice talks about universal design being, whenever possible, making it so that people can access by wheelchair.
Yep. I mean, from what I know of the property, there's nothing very steep up there right now. It's relatively flat and cleared. So even development-wise, I don't see that being an issue for any kind of entrances, but that's certainly something we'll keep in the back of our mind.
And I guess if the board has any more questions, but if the board's ready to open public comment, I will.
I got just a couple of questions.
Sure, go ahead, Jeff.
So are these are going to be condos, correct?
I believe so, yes.
These will be, yeah, so these will be for sale, owned. So these aren't rental units. These are intended to be sold.
Yes.
And so there will have to be some kind of homeowners association, for maintenance of the roads, septic, water, so on and so forth.
That's correct.
All right. So, if you go back to our regulations, it says if you're coming in with an application for that, we're going to need to see the covenants, maintenance plan, that type of thing as part of your submittal.
That's fine.
That's it.
All right. The board have any objections to me opening public comment at this time? I remind everyone who's listening, if you to unmute, it's *6 or a little icon on your screen if you're using the video, as well as you can type into the meeting chat, and I will try to read those off as well. If you don't.
Jamie, before we do that, before we open up for a public meeting, he did come prepared with, he had answered all the questions of one of the butters. Should he go through those before we open it up? Because that might actually answer some questions before people even ask them.
Sure. Would you want to read those, Scott, or you want me to read them?
I can read them real quickly.
Pardon me?
Everybody has a copy. I can read them quickly if everyone has a copy of the letter.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so we were in receipt of comments from the abutter, Richard and Victoria Spinelli, dated April 7th. And they had some questions. We posed some bold responses to them. Number one, will the proposed main entrance road be town or private? Right now, it's proposed to be private. Number two, has DOT been contacted? We have not reached out to them at this point. I am working on them on other projects. I know they are relatively busy. So until we get more data and a better design, I wanted to hold off on reaching out to DOT. So we will be doing that in the future. Their third comment, will the proposed 500-foot road be only accessed from Route 9? That is true. We have not done at this point a specific traffic study for this proposal. We had done one, our office had one done for the Village Place subdivision shortly down the road, which included all the surrounding areas and Route 125 intersections. So we do have that data. Number four, why isn't the entrance and or exit on Route 125? As discussed at this point, with the agreement, we don't have access to that area pending the owner wants to keep that 8 acres to themselves. Number five, is the recent Haley lot line adjustment of 20 feet reflected on the preliminary design? Again, we had taken this boundary from a recorded plan. So if that was very recent, it would not be updated. We will certainly bring that attention to the land surveyor when they are performing their boundary survey. Number six, how many units per building is proposed? As I Scott Cole
is now exiting.
Give him a minute to come back. It looks like you lost connection with Mr. Cole. I'll keep reading those as we're waiting. And if there's questions, number six was how many units per building are proposed, and that proposal consists of 4 units per building. Number 7, how do you propose trash to be handled? The response is trash in this type of development is by use of dumpster paid by association. Hello?
Hello, sorry.
Oh, that's all right.
Scott?
Is now joining.
I got you up to number 8. We're on number 8.
Okay. So number 8, why is your proposal for land and building maintenance? Will the property management be located on site? As I said, there will be an association. The actual on-site equipment, I don't know at this time. I can discuss that with the ownership. Number 9, how do you propose mail be handled? As I said, we actually are proposing a mail kiosk at the front of the job, which will make it easier for the owners to receive their mail and get off of Route 9. Number 10 are the proposed 84 units, condos or rentals. They are proposed to be condos, typically 2-bedroom with the possibility of 3 in some of them. Number 11, do the proposed buildings have garages and basements? The response was yes, the units will have 1 or 2 bay garages. Sidewalks was a question mark. As we've spoken of tonight, it sounds like that would be a yes. I guess to go a little further on that, I assume from Route 9 into the project, one side of the road would be adequate, and we can discuss that more later on. Will there be a play area, clubhouse, or green space? There will certainly be a green space towards the rear of the property of roughly 13 acres. There is a large proposed green area in between the units. There could be a play field or a green space. Number 14, the type of buffer you are proposing. We touched on that a little bit. Right now, we would like to keep all the natural vegetation we can as possible. Sounds like we'll be looking at landscape plans at least for the entrance of the job. How wide is the proposed roadway? The private road right-of-way is 50 feet, and we have the proposed pavement right now for the entranceway at 24 feet wide. Number 16, the preliminary design plan does not show our existing half-acre lot. What the abutter is speaking to, as you look at the plan on the top, on the east side, there was a house. In between that house and this parent parcel, there's a secondary parcel that they own. We were aware of that. We just did not add the line work at the time. That will be added to the plan. 17, what is the proposed plan for water and septic? As I said, there will be one community well in the rear of the job, and there will be more than likely more than one area for a proposed septic system. These will not be on individual systems. 18, what is the proposed distance to proposed buildings from our property line? I had stated at least from the sideline, they were roughly 45 feet, and from the rear line of the abutter is approximately 70 feet. Number 19, lot 238-35-1 will have a well and septic system when developed. Your project will need to include plans that do not impede on code requirement. As the board understands, we and no one else can trounce on somebody else's land per state criteria, so we are fully aware we cannot do that. And then lastly, number 20,
Jason White.
Is now joining.
And then number 20, what is the timetable and duration of this proposed project? Certainly the project would get started once vested and all approvals have been set. The duration, and most of the board members understand, would be market driven.
Thank you, Scott. One question that I get from that, if you have a 4-unit building plus garage space, how long do you envision? What is the footprint of a building that you might imagine that would house 4 units and garages?
On your, usually the 2 end buildings, I think these buildings are 80 feet long. So you can have 16 feet with a 4-foot for a stairwell, the outside units, and then the interior units are usually narrower.
I'd like to clarify, excuse me, I'd like to clarify why I'm bringing up landscaping and green space beyond visual buffering. Certainly current events clarify this for me as far as what used to be best practices. Now some things are more important for health and safety, with people having to be indoors, even trails often being rather crowded, apparently, according to what I've seen on social media at least. So there needs to be the potential for people to be outdoors, even if they can't necessarily leave the property.
Okay.
Yeah,
What are you referring
to that, Steve, I would say there's how many acres of green space behind there that I know there's trails that are already existing. It's a pretty walkable piece of property back there, isn't it?
I believe so. I mean, it's
That's
certainly
great.
It had been logged in the past, but certainly, it could be cleaned up. And the client's not going to want to leave it, so it's not accessible.
That's a good start. What I'm getting at is I would like to see more of a landscape type situation of benches and grass and that sort of thing.
Around the units themselves, you're saying?
Correct, yes.
All right, if the board has no more questions at this time, we'll open up public comment. And again, if you can either type your message or unclick your mute button, or if you're on the phone, *6 will unmute and we'll take your questions. If you could state your name and address, please, so we can get that for the record, that would be wonderful. Anyone out there? Sometimes it takes minutes. We'll be patient and give them a little bit to figure out.
I know, I'm gonna say my name, but I'm gonna ask about the mailbox.
Mr. Chairman.
Hello. Yes.
Yeah, this is Rick Spinelli.
Welcome, Rick.
Yeah, Route 9, I about the property that you're talking about. I had a couple of questions. You guys did a great job asking a lot of things that I had made some notes on and so forth, so I won't take as much time as I thought I'd have to. The buildings. My question number 11 was about basements and garages. I heard the response for garages, but do the buildings have basements?
Mr. Cole, proposed basements in these buildings?
I don't know at this time, to be honest. We don't, it depends if we have to look at test pits and water tables and see if that's even possible and whatnot. We do know that they will have garage bays. So they don't go all the way back. So it's a possibility for some to have basements or at least storage. But I can find out a better answer for you in the future.
Okay.
Okay.
Rick.
And the reason I asked that is because you mentioned the water table. What I'm concerned about is even though you may have 2 or 3 remote septic systems, I'm concerned about that area back there with 84 units being overburdened and eventually affecting my well. And that's basically one of my comments on my extra lot that I have that abuts you, that in the future, when I want to do something with that, I knew you wouldn't deliberately do something to hurt the property, and I know the state wouldn't let you do that, but I'm concerned this project here might do it on its own.
Mr. Cole, do you have a comment in regards to the septic and how you see that playing out?
Well, that's a normal concern, with every project. I think grade-wise, more than likely, the septic systems will be out towards the rear of the project, behind the unit, so it's going to go by gravity. We know the well will be placed in the rear because of the size of the radius. Other than that, really, the only thing would be drainage, and we are withheld to design and withhold that by writing criteria anyway. So we will certainly do our best for that. And as I said, the state has their own regulations that they make sure that we don't trounce on somebody else's property. So
Go ahead, Jason.
I
was gonna say, based on this design, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of room for septic, towards your property line or the other. you know, there's that interior green space that might house some and then behind the other units, but it would be, you know, if they try to wedge them behind, in between your property and those 3 rows of buildings there, you know, it might be a little tight, but something to keep an eye on. You had another question?
Yeah, that wet area out there. I mean, they can't put any remote septic systems back in there, I would assume, because they'll get into the wetlands. Is that correct?
I would say that is correct. Scott?
Which goes to my point about the systems having to be closer down in with all the buildings. And, you know, we've got to think about, I know the state has regulations, but that doesn't mean all that always works. You're going to have 84 units, and you're going to have 84 toilets, 84 showers, 84 sinks every day, you know, going away like no tomorrow, and it's just going to saturate everything. I'm just concerned about that. And then my other question was,
go ahead.
Scott, are you going to respond to that, or do you want me to ask my other question?
Go ahead and ask your other question, Rick, and then we'll have them answer them both.
Okay. The well, the community well. With that many units drawing off a community well like that, I'm concerned that if you tap into the same aquifer I'm on, I'm going to lose some of the water available to me in my well. My well now is 500 feet, and I've been told it gets about a half a gallon a minute, so I count on that head of the 500 feet. I don't know what that well is going to do to my well now that I have.
Yeah, I'll let Scott answer that, and then I'll add my comments as well.
Yeah, so right now, the thought is that the municipal well would be out behind the wetlands, so it'd be quite a ways away. And then the reason for the protected well radii is the amount of area that contains is supposed to be the amount of area that's required for draw to provide water for these amount of units. Even with that said, being so that it's going to be back there by, you know, over 1,000 feet away from your property. Being a community well, it will certainly be stringently reviewed by the state, because we will need a permit to actually get that, because it will be considered a community water supply. So again, there's certainly checks and balances for that, and that it will all be turned into the planning board for record and review. And then the other question is in regards to septic, you know, for you know, costs associated and everything like that, we always try to go gravity wherever possible, so that, you know, people don't have to deal with pump stations. Right now, I'm thinking that the best septic areas are behind the last 3 units on the east side. Between that and the wetland buffer, there's a very large upland area quite a ways back there that would be very suited for a septic area of, you know, probably a couple different beds. So it would be just distributed evenly. And again, that will be per the state criteria. That's what we have to go by.
And I'll point out that it's always prudent to think that if this was developed as single-family homes, you'd have 30 wells, let's say, and 30 septic systems. This is not, to me, an ideal use of the space, you know, in this part of town. I'd rather see something else, but I think it is good to think that if there was 30 individual wells, how would that impact you for better or worse? I can't answer if it's better one way or another, but it is the reality of that piece of property, and it's just condensed, you know, for this type of development.
I understand, but 30 is a far cry from 84 units. And also, if you have 29 acres there and you develop it all as residential and you put your infrastructure in there, you're not going to get 30 houses. And you have wetland. So that's how I looked at it. But anyway.
Any other questions? Yep.
I will point out that given the distancing to the rear of the property with the well, not that this is necessarily the case, but with respect to the aquifers, given the land structure here in Barrington, over much of Barrington, I can tell you that there were 3 houses built. Our wells are about 200 feet apart. And based on both the water testing as well as what happened during the drought a couple of years ago, we've determined that all three of us are actually tapped into 3 different aquifers, even though our wells are that close together. So there's a real possibility here that won't be tapping into the same aquifer.
I'm looking at the graphic for stratified drift aquifers in Barrington, and this area in question, not your place, Jeff, but the lot we're looking at here, is part of a pretty high transmissivity stratified drift aquifer. So I'm very surprised that Rick is having that much trouble getting very much water. So there's no telling exactly what's happening under the ground. It could be a little complicated. I would usually think that a stratified drift aquifer area is an easy place to get plenty of water, but a more concerning place for contamination to wander.
And I was gonna, now that you mentioned that, Steve, that's a good point. Being in the stratified drift aquifer, those condensed septics is of, something to pay special attention to as well.
Okay, I got another question. On
Yep.
the 29 acres that the Haley family own, would the applicant be buying that 28 acres and keeping 21 for themselves and then subdividing the other 8 back to the Haley family? Or is it going to be separated and still owned by the applicant?
I believe the intention is the owner is basically going to subdivide it, and the applicant is purchasing just the 21 acres.
Okay, all right. Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, as you mentioned earlier, this is just a preliminary discussion, and I think I'm pretty good right now with the questions I had. I feel I've got answers to them. I might have more in the future, but next time I'll let you know if I have more.
Very
So
good. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do we have anyone else? Go ahead.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Scott.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Yeah. This is Cheryl Murphy.
Hello, Cheryl.
How are you?
Can I get your
Jamie?
address? Can I get your address, please, for the
Sure.
record?
We own the house right across the street from Rick. It's 535 Franklin Pierce Highway.
Thank you.
Yep. Forgive me if this was clarified and I didn't catch it, but I've heard twice people ask where the mailbox carousel is going to be, and I think Scott said at the front of the property. I'm not sure. I just want to clarify, is that right as soon as you enter on Route 9?
He did mention the interior, and I'll let him specify more, but I'm thinking that little cutoff, I don't know if you saw the plan. Scott, is that little dugout you have on the entrance of Route 9, is that where you were intending?
That's correct. Yeah, as soon as you get off of the state highway, then there'll be an apron for a mail kiosk with roughly 2 parking spaces and then the mailbox.
Okay. And there's no.
Cheryl, are you viewing this on the computer or are you on your phone?
Yeah, I am. No, I'm on the computer, Jamie. I can see what you mean.
The graphic there?
I do. My concern would be 168 potential cars all stopping to get their mail at the same time of the day. Because everybody kind of pretty much goes to work and comes home from work at the same time. And I'm thinking about backup on Route 9. And I just wondered if there was a way to have the mailboxes further in the development. And sure. if that would be wise.
Yeah, I had the same thought that you did, and I was kind of just holding off at the time. But I think that an interior mailbox to me makes more sense. And I don't know from a design standpoint if there's things I'm not thinking of, but I think, with all the packages we get and multiple trips from every other delivery source, I think it would be probably a good idea to move that, inside where more people can line up and get their mail during, going and coming from work times.
Exactly, or maybe 3 or 4 different sets of mailboxes so that if there is one at the front, it's not the same mailbox for 168 different potential cars stopping. Yeah. Something like that.
Yeah, I'll let Scott speak to that part. I don't know if the Postal Service has an issue with having multiple stops, and they want one stop, but I'll let Scott, I don't know if you can fill us in on any thoughts there.
For a single development, just regarding the number, they certainly do want one centralized service, just like we did on Village Place. I believe there's, I think there's 53 lots in there. I actually live on the other side of that, and I have yet to see more than maybe 3 vehicles tops at that mail kiosk. So I don't think it's really that big of an issue. It's certainly up to the mail people where they would like it. Internally, the problem is if you put it even past the first 4 buildings, people that live in those have to go past their building, and unfortunately, they wind up turning around right in the middle of the road. So that's why we like to try and keep it at the entrance, so there's no turning around. You either grab it on your way in or your way out, and it keeps everything more fluid.
Scott, I thought earlier you were indicating that the mail service was towards the Hammerhead more centrally. There's that a cistern. What's that graphic?
No, it's a cistern. Yeah, that's a fire cistern.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, and Cheryl, as the development, as he becomes more specific on the plans and we see things in more detail, we'll be able to see that space and kind of discern at that point if we think there's a safety issue there and we should ask them to move it, or if we think that might be an adequate spot. Sometimes it's hard to tell with certain scale at certain points of the plans. They're very preliminary.
Okay, thank you, Jamie.
Any other questions?
Jamie, this is Rick
Yes.
Spinelli again.
Hi, Rick.
Hi. I had one more question for Scott. Are these townhouse-looking type buildings, or are they just condos with 2 levels of units?
I believe they'll be more of a townhouse structure. Jason, are you still available?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. You want to relate on that?
Yes, Scott is correct. It's going to be more townhouse style.
Okay. And then my last question is, are you going to have some sort of a sign out at the road or something identifying that as a certain area or townhouse community like?
We haven't put much thought into that at this point.
Well, don't think about it then.
I would
I was just
suspect for trails and whatnot, they'll want something. But we have not proposed anything at this point, but we will be looking at that.
Yeah. Okay. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Cheryl, I didn't know if we cut you off, if you had another question in there, or if anybody else out there has any questions.
No, I'm sorry, go
Cheryl.
ahead.
No, this is Susan Gaudiello, but if Sharon wants to finish her questions, and then I'll chime in later.
I just, I'm not sure this is something we can do anything about. I would love to see the entrance to this from 125 instead of 9, but I'm assuming that's something that the Department of Transportation will assess and rule on.
Well, no, we got to look at it on face value. This is a big piece of property, and if the property owner chooses to subdivide it, there's no longer frontage on 125. It's 2 different lots at that point. So
Right.
it's not a question of choice. It's that doesn't exist. That won't exist after the subdivision takes place, if that makes sense to you. So
Right.
we can't.
I get it.
Yeah.
But might if the DOT said, we were nervous about getting a driveway permit for a tiny little shop right across the street there. I mean, so there's been no driveway permit applied for yet, obviously, because this is preliminary. I guess I was kind of wondering if the DOT says you can't have these many cars coming on and off of the road at this point, is there still an option to have the development, and would they then change plans and maybe shift it to 125?
I can let Scott talk about that. I mean, that would certainly be a discussion between the developer and the property owner and whether they wanted to rearrange their agreement. But I'll let Scott speak to that, and the likelihood that they'll get a driveway permit, I think, is high. But
Okay.
Scott, you want to elaborate maybe?
Yeah, and again, I have not had specific conversations with New Hampshire DOT yet as to this proposed entranceway. I am familiar in some of the other proposals I've done in town. And again, as the chairman said, the proposal right now is that the original owner would like to keep the 8 acres and the frontage along Route 125. However, knowing that I have a sneaking suspicion based upon the amount of trips generated per day on 125 versus Route 9. I know Route 9 does seem busy. However, it's not nearly as busy as Route 125 can be. That's going to be the criteria really that New Hampshire DOT looks at. So if there was a choice, I think they would make us try to make the Route 9 work anyhow.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and I'll elaborate and say that, I mean, it does take, we got to think that this is Village District. This is supposed to be Barrington's, extended town center area. If you see a vision 10 years down the road, we're going to all be doing 30 miles an hour on these roads in this area going into downtown. So this is the future that we all kind of collectively chose. So it's something to consider. I mean, it may seem fast now, but it's going to have to slow down at some point as more cars and traffic go on these roads and traffic studies are done and they change the speed limits, et cetera. But that's the reality of progress. Susan, you still there? You got a question?
Yes, I am. And Rick touched on a number of them.
Could I just get your address, please? I'm sorry, just for the
528
record.
Franklin Pierce. Yep,
Thank you.
528 Franklin Pierce. And I understand the calculations as to the number of units, but I have to say that looked awfully intensive, that many units on that portion of the property. Particularly, it really backs up pretty closely to that wetlands. And I can tell you, having walked there recently, because my property goes all the way back, it's pretty damp in the springtime. So I see your drawings, but I also see some buildings that are right on the edge of that. I just wish it weren't quite so intensively developed. With respect to the buildings themselves, you've mentioned a garage. Are these then 3-story buildings, the garage level and then the first level and a second level?
Thank you. Scott or Jason,
Yeah.
you want to answer that?
At the current time, yes, that is our proposal.
Okay.
3 stories.
Well, the thought would be, to Donna's earlier question, those are not going to be anyway handicapped accessible unless you're putting chair lifts in them, because you have stairs right from the beginning. I shared Rick's concern about septic, so that's already been addressed. And as far as traffic is concerned, you're probably aware that at in the morning it's backed up probably to the cemetery on the western side of 125, and in the evening it is backed up to Drew's Pond in front of our house. So we make a point of not trying to get out of our driveway between like 4:30 and 5:30. So I am concerned about that much traffic or that many cars being added with just a driveway entrance. I think I don't know whether a turning lane is possible or something like that to help ease that, but I'm afraid that's really going to be quite a block. And I too will be interested in the landscaping, not just for the Route 9, but obviously that whole side that abuts our property. I would hope not only that you leave what trees are there, but you're going to have particularly if you have families there, that's a lot of people. So I'll be interested in that. Finally, the question I have is whether there is going to be street lights along the roads, or what kind of light issues might we have from that kind of a development.
Thank you, Susan. I'll let Scott, we do have a comprehensive lighting requirements with this type of development. They'll have to do a lighting plan for this, but I'll let Scott maybe speak to some specifics if they thought of any or talked about that.
We have not, being that, and it's going to have a catch-22, but being in Barrington, and I know some of the owners around here, they like what we have now, the rural feel, that we tried not to have these large lights lighting up the sky. The only thing that we need to address at times are safety issues. Again, we don't have any proposed at this time. However, if we are talking, it sounds like there'll be a requirement, at least for one side of the road with a sidewalk. We may have like a low level lamp for something for safety, at least maybe on the intersections. But we are not looking for street lights or anything like that.
Scott, on Susan's question, I was just curious, what is the frontage on Route 9?
The frontage?
Yeah.
If I remember, Jeff, after the last lot line adjustment, it was like right down to 220, wasn't it?
I thought it was somewhere in that neighborhood when we added the extra 20 feet on that lot to the west.
It's
Right.
251.
251.
Yeah, because I'm getting 270 on this, so that'd be about right, 250.
Yeah.
So this is Susan again. So I would think that your driveway is going to have the capacity for an incoming lane and 2 outgoing lanes, one to turn left and one to turn right.
No, that would be.
Half the people are going to drive to Dover and the other half are going to drive to Concord.
And I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, looking at the existing traffic studies, and if you have to do another one, that'll all be determined by that and DOT, correct?
Yes, that's certainly within DOT's judgment.
And as far as lighting, I think we will be looking for a comprehensive lighting plan with, cast radiuses, et cetera. I think that would be relevant on a project of this size.
Okay. So look at
With the
the
board,
candles.
would the board agree that that's something they'd be?
Yeah, I think so. Hey, for
That's
my own edification, I don't know the answer to this, but I know we've dealt with the issue of having a turning lane when we were dealing with Joe Falzone's development up 125 and in a couple other places down by the Christmas. So the state will tell you when they examine this whether you have to have a lane. For instance, if you were to look at the northwest side of that drive there, is there anything prohibits you if you said in anticipation of traffic and to get the people off of Route 9 that in the upper left corner there of the lot that you could actually put a turn lane in there for 50 feet, 100 feet or whatever? Is there anything prohibit you from doing it if you wanted to by the state's requiring you to?
I don't believe so. Usually they will stipulate if they want one. If you want to propose one, you can. They can tell you no. But I think that's rare.
Well, that might be something to think about, at least in that direction. If you're going east on Route 9, you're coming in from 125, that gets you off the road and out of the way.
Yeah, a typical 100-foot long diesel lane.
Yeah.
Yeah, we will certainly discuss that with New Hampshire DOT.
All right, does the public, is there anyone out there in the public that would like to ask a question or have a comment? Hearing none, I'll close public comment. If someone comes in late or has a pressing question, feel free to speak up. With this format, I'll be happy to open public comment again if I have to. I'll just reiterate the planner's comments. Looking for design that's consistent with traditional New England design, especially this many buildings, this many units. I think that the board is going to be looking at that a lot more closely than some cookie cutter, big, giant 80 by 40 square boxes that don't have much curb appeal. Especially so close to town center. I think it's going to be important that we come in with an attractive proposal that's going to add to the community. Something else that's been mentioned a few times is buffers for the existing abutters in their properties. I think that would be important to add. Internal sidewalks, we'll mention that again. And then taking a look at some of those mixed uses of accessibility and, all the age categories that may, and different demographics that may look. It seems as though you've addressed some of the stuff with the fire chief, cistern, turning radius, etc. Police seem to have no issues to mention. Does the board have any other questions? Comments?
I just wanted to point out that this is a lot of people in one place. This is where the town's longstanding strategic vision has said we would prefer people to provide a base for commercial development in the area. The tricky part is the degree of delays that end up happening at the 9 and 125 intersection, according to the Regional Planning Commission's study of the area. So that's a conundrum that we've kind of cornered ourselves into to some degree, and I don't have a great answer for that, but there are some best practices that we've been talking about as far as frontage roads and other alternatives that we'll have to keep wrestling with.
Thank you, Steve. And one thing I want to just reiterate, the lighting plan, just so that abutters know the effect that your lighting will have on them. That's another one to make sure you address. Any other board members have questions or comments?
I have no further questions.
Is the goal, Scott, now to close design review, or what would?
Yeah, I believe so. We'll have to come back with a full application, get the surveyor on the ground and get some real hard data and then go forward.
All right. I would entertain a motion to close design review at this time.
I make a motion to close design review for 238-36-V-20-design.
I'll second that.
That's Jeff Brand and a second by Donna Masucci. We'll have a vote.
Is
Pardon me?
now exiting.
Oh, someone exit. Steve Diamond.
Diamond Eye.
Allard.
Allard, aye.
Masucci.
Masucci, aye.
Unknown participant is now exiting.
Brand.
Brand, aye.
Jennison, aye. Design review is closed. Thank you so much for your time.
Great, thank you, everybody.
All right, take care. Have a great night.
You too.
All right, very good. Moving on quickly. What do we got? Where's my thing?
Jason White.
Is now exiting.
I would just, I recommend to the chair, we've been at this for almost an hour and a half, that we take a 5-minute break and then resume.
We will. Sounds good. Let's take a 5-minute break. It is 7:49. We'll be back here at 7:55. Thank you very much.
Hey, Connor, are you still on the meeting right now?
Yes, I am.
Can you hear me okay with this microphone?
I can hear you great, and I can see you now also.
Perfect. All right. How about sharing my screen? Will that be possible if it comes up with having questions and being able to direct
Absolutely.
center in on the plan? Okay.
Yep. So are you, the only thing we need to make sure of is, did you join the meeting in the desktop program or are you in a web app?
I did it through the web app.
Okay. So you're going to have to join it with the desktop program. You don't have to log in or anything. It's the same thing. Instead of clicking that white button on the right, just click the purple button on the left. It'll install the program quickly. Unfortunately, the web program doesn't support.
I'm sorry. No, I do have it through the app on my computer.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
So I just made you a presenter. So if you hover your mouse, you should see that rectangle with an arrow pointing up.
Yes.
Right next to the microphone. Yeah, so you can go ahead and give that a try now. If you click on that, a window will pop up below showing the screens that are open on your computer. You can either choose to share your desktop, whatever your screen is seeing, or a specific window, which I would recommend if it was a PDF file or something like that.
Yep. That's what I have there too. Yep. Okay.
So if you want to give it a try and let you know, give you some feedback.
Yeah, let me just look and see, because when I look at the people on the right-hand side, it still says that I'm an attendee and not a presenter. There's only 3 presenters, you, Barbara, and John. So I didn't pop up on that list.
Oh, okay. Let me go ahead and try that again.
Yeah.
Action failed.
Okay, should I try to log back on again?
That's interesting. Just thinking right now. Let me try somebody else. Presenter. Barbara, are you on the call, Barbara? Okay, doesn't sound like she is. Since she created the meeting, it could be that she has to.
Okay.
It shouldn't be that way, but
okay. If not, we'll run with what you have on there. I just if they had questions, I have in the kind of a presentation PDF that has just some of the additional items.
Perfect.
Like sort of the larger subdivision. If they have some questions on that, I could zoom in on that if needed.
Awesome. Yep. So I'll once Barbara hops back on, we can give that a try. Give her a try making you a presenter. And if not, I can pull it up and we can push through.
Okay. If not, I think what I'll do, Ryan, is maybe I'll email it to you just in case.
Perfect. Yeah, I think that's a great plan.
Hey, Connor, is there a way, maybe it's just a big lag because I don't have all that much memory in this computer, but how do I get to the mute unmute control?
So if you hover over the picture that you're seeing, which should be 4 video tiles right now, there's a microphone icon right next to the camera icon. There's a clock all the way to the left, a rectangular menu bar that pops up, hovers over the lower 2 video tiles.
It comes up sometimes, but I'm not sure when and why. Where do I put the cursor again?
So if you just move your cursor over the video tiles, if your cursor is still, it'll disappear after a number of seconds.
I think next time I should install the desktop app and it might be better.
Oh, so you're in the web app, you're saying?
Right.
And the mic. Okay, so it could be that, I took some screenshots of the web app to help me provide just this kind of support. But
well, Connor, I'm on the web app and it works fine for me.
Oh, okay. And do you see it where I'm describing it, popping up over the video tiles?
Yeah, exactly. And if you don't keep moving the cursor, it goes away.
Well, with headphones, I've just left myself unmuted, and that seems to be not causing trouble. So maybe that's okay.
Yeah, I don't have any background noise coming from you. I think I've had all of the planning board members unmuted, and it hasn't been an issue. So. Barbara, are you back on the call?
She was just headed that way, Connor, I think.
Okay. I'm going to have her try to get Jeff Oliva as a presenter. I was unable to. It might be because I didn't create tonight's event.
Oh, okay. So he can't get in?
Nope, he's in the meeting, but if you can just click on Show Participants, and in the list of participants, Jeff Oliva, if you can click on the 3 dots next to him and say Make Presenter.
Okay.
When I did it, it came up and gave me an error message and said, "Oh no, you don't." So
now, where would he be?
yeah, so if you click on the menu bar that hovers over the video tiles, the icon that looks like 2 people right to the left of the hang up button should say Show Participants. And on the
Okay, yeah.
right-hand side, that should bring you up a list of everybody that's in the meeting. You'll see the names. And under attendees, you should see Jeff Oliva, Geoff.
I just put him in to be one a presenter.
No, you don't have the permission to either, John. It probably
Oh,
gave
I
you an
just
error
clicked on it.
message.
Oh,
Yeah, try again. It'll give you that error message. It's got to be Barbara. So click on those three dots, Barbara, and a little menu will pop up with 4 options. The last one should be make a presenter.
And then okay, change will, okay, this will affect or share content.
Yep,
Okay,
go
so I
ahead.
hit
Click.
change.
Yep, that sounds
But
great.
Action, says action failed.
Okay. Yep, I don't think. Do one more thing for me, Barbara.
Okay.
Do you remember how you got to those meeting options where we changed the setting?
Yep, I do.
The time
Yep,
before?
you want me to add him where your name is?
I don't think you'll be able to add him because he's not in our organization, but I think you'll be able to change that setting to say everyone instead of only specific people.
Okay, let me see that. Okay, that one. Okay. Let's see.
Nice
now.
glasses, Jamie.
I broke them. You know, I'm trying to piece them back together. This happens
It's easier,
Okay, I
Tom.
changed it.
$5 at Walmart.
Still failing.
Okay. No worries. I've got the file open on my computer. Jeff emailed it to me. So I think we'll work with that and take lessons learned into the next round.
Okay.
All right. Welcome, Jeff. Is everyone back? Planning board members? Donna, you out there? Ron, you?
I'm here. I'm here.
Thank you. All right.
Thanks, Ron. I'm back as well.
All right, Jeff Brand, you there?
I just waved. You obviously can't see.
Oh, no, I don't have the pictures. I see Steve.
I'm here. Yep.
All right, welcome to Jeff. Jeff Oliva, I want to first say hello and I let you know the seawall you designed for my mother is still standing, but 2 down from it have fallen down this last storm. So
We are currently working on the design for that seawall right now.
are you? Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, one that was successful, so you did a nice job on that. Thank you.
And we're gonna mimic that design for those properties down below.
Perfect. So we have, I'm gonna get rid of these. We have the town hall, applicant Connor MacGyver, town administrator, as well as and Jeff Oliva from Civil Consultants presenting. If you want to give us a brief overview, and the floor is yours.
Okay. Again, my name's Jeff Oliva. I'm with Civil Consultants here. We're representing the town for this site project. As everybody knows here, that this lot that the town is going to use is from a larger development. It's part of one of the commercial lots that fronts on Route 125. Access to the town hall lot will be through a new roadway and new right-of-way. And as this larger development is under review by DOT, we'll get our connection in through that. The building is 8,800 square feet plus or minus, single-story building that's going to house all of the town offices, and we'll also have a meeting room for planning board and selectmen and other areas, committees like that. We have access with parking in and out. I've had a little bit of a input from the planning office, so we've have kind of a couple of waiver requests that we've submitted. They have to do with culvert pipe size and culvert depth, and then we also have a review for the special permit, section 9.6, because some of our work is close to and a little bit of grading and temporary work inside the 50-foot wetland buffer. And then the last thing that we discussed at the last meeting was, since this project is considered part of the larger project, we have submitted an application to the New Hampshire DES for alteration of terrain, which has them really look into stormwater design and stormwater control measures and that we received an email that I think all the members have now from Du Bois and King, and like to see if the board is in agreement that we can rely on the DES review process to evaluate the stormwater, as opposed to having the duplicate services with Du Bois and King going through that. Glad to answer any questions. Maybe if who's ever in control of the screen can maybe just click it onto the town hall site plan, that we can then just kind of take a look at that, and I can generate that may generate some questions from you folks on the board. I'll do my best to answer them, and we can hopefully get them, if there's anybody from the public, answer their questions, and keep moving forward here.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Board members, do you have any questions?
Well, I will have some questions about the waivers. I did a little bit of reading about that, and well, we can talk about that at the appropriate time.
Yeah, I've got some questions, but I want to talk about the waivers, and in particular how they were submitted and when they were submitted. And Jamie, this is part of a bigger problem that we're running into as a board. We want to hold off on that until we ask the other questions.
Sure. Do the members have any other questions? I think
I got a set of plans this week so I could review them, and I've got a number of questions here. So some of the things.
Connor, is it possible to get the site plan and put up onto the screen?
Oh, I'm sorry. Is that not what's up right now?
What I see on my screen is still the last present.
I see the site plan, L1.
Oh, you do? Oh, no.
I don't.
I see a small.
I'll go ahead and stop sharing and start again and see if that pushes it through.
Okay.
It's just really tiny, Connor.
Let me go ahead and get it back up there, and we'll see. The folks that couldn't see it before, can you see it now?
Not yet.
Oh, nice.
I'm still seeing the old plan.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing too. Also, the
I see you moving and enlarging the town hall plan on my computer.
I don't have that. Yeah. Just have like a little tile.
Nobody else is seeing this right now?
I've got you, Connor. You and I are on the same page, but I think
Yeah, I got L1 showing on mine too.
Okay, that's weird because I'm still looking. The plan hasn't changed. I'm still looking at the preliminary design plan for that residential development.
As am I, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really bizarre. I just tried. Let me try stopping to share for longer. So we'll see if it goes away. Jeff and Mr. Allard, if you can let me know if the presentation disappears, that would be helpful.
All right, I've got it right now. I've got L1. So.
Well, you shouldn't have anything because I shut it off. So that's not yet forward progress. Are you still seeing the old plan?
I am still seeing the old plan, yes.
And I'm still seeing L1 now.
John Huckins, if you could do me a favor and just click share from your computer, just put anything up just to see if that pushes out the conflict that seems to exist.
Okay, I just hit it. I don't know, nothing.
I think you're on mute. I think I can hear you through Jamie's microphone.
Okay.
But
Yeah, so right now I hit it and nothing changed, and I still got L1 showing on my screen too.
did your you clicked on share and the window popped up and you clicked a screen under there?
Okay.
Oh, I clicked on the picture. Now I have it large.
Okay, when I hit shared screen, it comes up with this whole blank thing now that shows Teams.
All right, I'm going to try to put the plan back up. So I went from sharing nothing to now I'm sharing the plan again, zoomed in to the site plan. Anybody able to see that?
I have it. I clicked on the tile that was there.
I've had it all along. It never went away.
Same here. Yeah.
I still have the other project.
I have the old project as well.
Gosh, that's so weird. I wish I knew what the issue was, but I guess this is the same plan, Mr. Allard. If you have the plans in front of you, this is the same plan that was printed. There's no changes on this. Maybe some of the other materials.
I have the paper copy in front of me.
Yeah. And hopefully the public sees the correct one on their screen, and they'll be able to follow along.
All right.
And it is available on the town's website as well, with the application files. So
something has changed because I've got L1, but it's now zoomed in on the building.
On the building. Yep.
That's what I got too.
Yep, perfect. Okay, let's start there. That'd be great.
All right.
Oh, is everybody up to speed now after all that?
Yep.
Some questions that I have. Number one, so when the plan set that I have here doesn't necessarily meet the requirements in our site plan regulations. For instance, it doesn't have the existing conditions plan. Are you going to make this conform to the site review regulations?
I believe we submitted the copy of the larger subdivision plan that had the portion for the existing conditions with our package. I can double check that. It's been a while now, but that was our intent, was to look at the original information that we received from the developer, and we were using that as our basis for our existing conditions plan. That's where we received the contour information, wetland, soil information that we've used, independent of the test pits that we've procured ourselves.
All right. Well, the regulations have the requirements of what needs to be on the existing plan sheet, and all I can say is I think I have been given all of the actual plans, and it's not in the package of plans that I have.
Okay.
Another question. So looking at this sheet, there's with respect, we can start off here on the left-hand side of this drawing. So we've got this entrance, we've got this termination of the proposed road here. We've got infrastructure, i.e. drainage system that appears to come across the road there. And I think it has, there's a small drainage basin, 18-inch pipe that goes over into that pond where test pit number 1 is.
Yep.
So are there any, you're now interacting, you've got your lot, you've got your plan, but you are connecting into this other lot across the road there that's a different commercial lot. What instruments are there as far as agreements that are going to be in place to connect those systems up for maintenance as well as construction?
Yep. On the subdivision plan, there's a grading and easement area for that roadway. Grading and drainage easement for that section of the roadway that accomplishes the culvert that crosses under the new road. And what we did is we showed, based on the information that was provided to us by the developer, that edge of pavement that's going to run up the hill. Obviously, it continues up the hill for the rest of the development. We ended it off at a certain point because to show so that we can gain the access into the town hall property. And if everything approves and that portion doesn't get done, we know that the developer is going to install that entrance, install the drainage improvements that are in the right of way and on those sides. What we've done with our drainage is that we've used the property line as basically our dividing line. The roadway coming down has a ditch line that will cross across the property under a culvert that's at the driveway and then continue underneath the new road. Our stormwater system captures the water from the site. It has that one catch basin that's up by the building that then discharges down to the detention pond 11P that's with test pit 1. And what that area is, that discharges out into a stone lined basin that will allow that water to slow down, capture some sediment as it goes out before it hits that detention pond. And then our flows will discharge the site through another catch basin into that roadway right-of-way area at a level that meets the preconditions. So what we're doing is, and with this infrastructure, is capturing the stormwater that's directly just on the town hall property and then pushing it into that area. That was all incorporated into the design thought process for the larger town hall, the larger development, through being able to capture and do this. There's some detention ponds and piping that goes on to the north off of our property onto that other commercial lot. So that's all part of flow from this project to get into that area, independent. So we looked at our design for the town hall property as being totally independent from that larger development.
All right, while we're in that area of the drawing, so if I look off to the left there, well, on the left-hand side, if you go out to 125, where the road comes out, intersects, on the south side of that, you see final location and new utility pole to be determined. Yep. I get that. You pull in, there's going to be a pole at the corner of the road going back in. But then I see, as I travel up the new road, where just before it terminates, there's another final location and new utility pole to be determined. And I'm wondering why that is. I thought we were supposed to have underground utilities in that development, and in particular, would be required to go to the town hall.
Yeah, we would have, I'm not sure what the development is going to have for, and what the approvals are for running power from Route 25 up to the residential properties. We were not part of that, so we assume that it may be overhead wires from Route 125 up through the right-of-ways, and then getting up to that development. Underground electric will come from any pole from the right-of-way into the new town hall process. So we have, yep.
Well, if I remember correctly, when we approved that, it specifically said, put a note on the plans that said all utilities will be run underground in that development.
Okay. Jeff's correct. It has underground power for that subdivision.
Right.
Okay.
And would that be that in the residential development on the commercial part?
Well, coming into the development, that's all part of the development coming off of 125.
I think there's a distinction there.
Yeah, it's going to be underground from 125 in, according to your approval of the subdivision.
Right, that's what I
120. Okay.
Okay. So I was not aware of that. So what we'll do on our plan is that if it's all underground, then it's going to come all underground from the right of way into the property.
Yeah, okay, because we didn't waive that, and otherwise, I mean, if you want to do anything overhead, you'd have to get a waiver of site review regulation 443. But that's the way we approved the development. So
okay, so
I don't see any reason to give you a waiver. So.
No, I'm not asking for a waiver on that. So I was not aware of that. So we will update the final plan that will show that being underground power.
All right, as we move across the plan here, so another thing is drain lines per 4.7.7 parent 5 requires that drain pipes be either ADS N12s or reinforced concrete pipe. So I'm trying to determine off plans and don't see that that's specified on the plans what type of drain pipe you're using meets our regs.
Yeah, we're using the corrugated plastic pipe. That would be the ADS style pipe. Yep.
All right, so that's the CPP.
Yep, that's right.
Okay, somewhere then I would suggest you note on the plans that is 8812, so that, you know, somebody can match up the plans against the regs.
Yep, okay. I guess we just take that for granted that's it. Yep.
I understand, but
Yep, we'll add the detail on sheet L2.
I don't
Yep,
like you taking for granted, Jeff.
No, I understand that. On L2, where we have our culvert details, I will make that adjustment to indicate that.
Okay.
Unknown participant is now exiting.
Is there curbing here along the parking lot?
I do. I've got a little bit of curbing that runs along the handicap parking side of it as it runs up on that side.
Is that shown on the plan?
I've got, there's an arrow that talks about granite curb up at the top right on the back edge, and it runs right along that face from the side, right where whoever's moving the mouse right there, down along that same edge of the.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Well, because that's supposed to be on the plan, so I guess that's where it is. I missed that. It was difficult to discern here. All right. Benchmark required on the plan. Where's the benchmark?
Benchmark is down there by the utility pole. There's currently a benchmark on the existing utility pole that is going to be removed. And then that benchmark, once we get that information, we have that information because we tied it in with our own surveyors, not the larger project surveyors information. They gave us their control. We went out with our equipment when we located the test pits and tied into it. So currently there's a benchmark there. Once the construction starts, we will set benchmarks for the contractor wherever he needs them in multiple locations so that they are set for construction. So right now there's a benchmark, and we've carried the benchmark that was used in the original larger development plan, which is on that utility.
All right. Our regulations have a required note. It's 3.2.10 parent 7 that it is required to be on the plan that says if additional erosion control measures are required, then they will be implemented. It won't be any cost to the town. I didn't see that note anywhere on the plans.
Yeah, that's note 23.
No.
Site plan note number 23.
No, that's not the same. Oh, well, what you did, okay, I see what you did. You added two together. Got it.
Yep.
All right. Speaking of erosion control, so you're supposed to, if you are going to have to install erosion control, it's supposed to be on the plan, at least preliminarily, where that's supposed to go. Do you have that on the plan?
Yeah, we do. If you look at the plan, there's a line type that is a straight line with an X. And the best place to see that would be along the backside of the pond 21P. And that's where we feel that would be the location where we need to put some erosion control, because that's the down slope side of the project. And we have that right there.
All right. So is that in the legend?
Let me see here. I'm trying to back and forth through. No, it doesn't look like it's in the legend, but there's a we got a note on there. But
how about fix that?
Yeah, we'll fix that. Yep.
All right. Let's see. Going back to the lighting plan, I got some questions about that.
Okay, I'll do my best. That was prepared for us by the lighting manufacturer. But I'll do yep.
One question was, which standard is used in the regulations? It has low, medium, high. I infer from what I see that you used medium.
Yep.
Is that correct?
That is what we use would be the median.
Okay, so given the table, it says that you have the minimum foot candle is 0.6. You have areas in the northwest and the northeast corners of that parking lot that don't standard.
Okay, I'm trying to get to it in my plan set here. So.
And Jeff, I have a quick question on that right away. I'm sorry to interrupt, but the medium doesn't seem to apply. It's under high, it says civic centers, which it seems to me they would fall into that category. So I don't know that the medium lighting level is appropriate for this facility.
Well, I didn't interpret this as a civic center. It's a municipal building, but I wouldn't necessarily call it a civic center. When I think of a civic center, I think of a large area. I mean, Cumberland County Civic Center. I mean, that's a large facility.
I would agree with you on Jeff on that. I think this is a much more low key operation than something like a civic center.
Yeah. So the minimum is 0.6. Yeah, I see that we've got in one location in that far edge parking stall. There's a 0.4.
There's 0.5 to the upper left and 0.4 actually there. And the same thing exists up in the right-hand corner also. So.
Yep, we can adjust that. We can, and I think that's as simply as moving some of the poles around that we have. We can do that and modify that.
Hey, Ron, back to your question. So when I look at the requirements on medium, community shopping centers and office parks, I would think the town offices would be very similar to an office park.
You know, I could see why you go there, Jeff, but to me, civic recreation centers, cultural centers, civic centers, regional shopping centers, fast food restaurants, you know, gas station, convenience stores, it seems to me that, you know, the town hall should be at least that level, to me.
Well, I think it's somewhat dependent on the number of people, the size of the facilities, the number of people you expect coming into those facilities. I don't think that, you know, although it's an odd pairing that you have a gas station and a convenience store paired with a civic center. So this table.
I'll tell you.
Well, I think a civic center to me is where you're going to have, you know, general public going there, and obviously town hall you are. As Marsh pointed out, we have an aging population, and it seems to me going a lower light level for the town hall is a questionable decision.
The only thing I'll add is one of the things that Barrington in general has pushed for is lower lighting, not brighter lighting. We went through this actually with the gas station because their lighting is quite low. They actually wanted to put brighter lighting in, and we said no. It met the regulations. That was one of the public's concerns in general. We've heard is they don't want the real brightness, but it has to be safe. So you have to balance, is what's provided safe, as opposed to, is it gonna like light up the whole area?
Right. Yeah, Mark, I get that, but this is along 125 across the streets is commercial buildings that are probably going to be well lit. So I don't see that necessarily. I see it in general, but I don't see it applying here very well.
Well, in with respect, I'll point out a couple of things. First off, primary uses of the town hall, given its manning, is during the day. Second, the use of medium as a category includes hospital parking lots, transportation, airports, and residential complex parking. So we were talking of the development on Route 9 that you could have senior citizens living there. You talk about hospitals who are servicing people, an elderly population. So if the lighting from a technical standpoint has been deemed adequate for airports, hospitals, residential complexes, it just seems to me from a technical perspective that would address your concerns, Ron.
Right. And with respect, Ron, I would agree with Jeff as well, because if you look at low, I mean, that's educational facilities and churches, and that would be more in keeping with the use of this building as more, I think, of it kind of a church type function, you know, when I think of sizes of gatherings and educational facility as opposed to concert arena, you know, civic center type things that you know, is what comes to mind when I hear that. So I think falling into the medium category seems, you know, appropriate.
Yeah, what we see for the medium for office and town hall, other projects that we've worked on fall really close to this medium style usage. Also remember, other than, you know, really the winter time, usage in the dark is not a lot, other than, you know, when we have a planning board meeting or a selectmen's meeting or something like that, that's in that space. Most of the time is, you know, the 9 to 5 or the later areas in there, and the general office park, as you mentioned, Jeff, the hospital lighting, that is more than adequate to provide safety and visibility for a parking lot and access to a building.
And 0.9 is high, and I'm just looking around, and a lot of it does meet the 0.9, right? In many of the areas.
Yeah, we have a couple little spots, and I think by moving around 1 or 2 light poles and shifting around maybe a wall pack will let us hit the one or 2 dim spots that are at the edges of the parking lot.
Right.
Without having to add an additional pole.
Hey, what a segue. Speaking of wall spots, so one of the things that's required in the regulations in 3.8 parents 5 is it requires all relevant building elevations showing fixtures, portions of walls to be eliminated, aiming points of any external lights onto the building. So I didn't see those in the prints. I didn't see anything that defines, and it is supposed to be included in the prints. If you're going to have lighting fixtures on the exterior of the building, that those be shown as part
yeah, they will be shown, but I'm going to tell you the reason why that they're not on the plans right now is because we've been bouncing back and forth and manipulating the floor plan on the inside a little bit. So it's shifting windows, shifting doors a little bit, so that once we get everything, now I think we're pretty close to having everything locked down on what the internals, the innards of the building are going to be. Then we can prepare those final elevations and show where those wall packs are going to go.
Okay. Those are the questions that I had on the plans.
Any of the board members have questions?
I just have a question, Jeff. I just want to make sure we're in compliance. In our parking lot regulations, we have requirements for perimeter shade trees and internal shade trees. I see you have maples there and it says it's going to comply. I just want to make sure we do comply.
Did you did you have an opportunity to review that?
I believe we do with what we're looking there and trying to maintain trees that are around the rest of the property other than areas that are going to be disturbed by the drainage structures. So we have, ideas along the 125 areas to try to maintain and selectively cut some of the trees in that area to keep them. I have 2 trees, 2 deciduous trees that are going to be placed in that intersection where the parking lot changes. And we also have another one that's up towards the driveway exit area between the building and the drive area on that side too.
Now, Jeff, you on your note with it says proposed red maple to satisfy parking lot and landscaping requirements, your typical 3. So it seems like you're referring to it, but it ties in how many parking spaces you have, and I just want to make sure we do comply with that.
Sure. Yep. I'll double check that with Marcia, and we'll go through it with and get that squared away.
Jeff, it's Marcia. Would it be possible, I know I literally took the plan and colored it in.
Yep.
just to identify where all the trees and landscaping was. Would it be possible to do a color rendering for the board for the final, for the landscaping?
Sure, I can colorize and show that. Yep.
It's just a bit, there's a lot on the plan, so I think it'd be easier.
Sure. Yep. So what we have is we have the trees around the outside of the development. We want to try to keep what we can in that area. And then I have trees, deciduous trees, and then we have some shrubbery that will be placed along the front of the building in between the parking and the building area on that little bit of green space between that one western parking lot.
All right. If there's no other questions, I think we'll move on to discuss the 9.6 special permit. There's a temporary impact, about 500 square feet. The proposed construction of the new town office is a permitted use. The structure is completely out of the buffer zone, and the impact will be incidental, grading and clearing. The impact is temporary, and any impact will be replanted. The structure is located 100 feet from the nearest wetland. Silt fence and erosion control berms will be installed per project drawings. Any impacted areas in the buffer zone will be replanted and allowed to revert to native vegetation after the site has been fully stabilized. This project has been submitted to New Hampshire DES for review under the AOT, and as well as the stormwater management plan associated with the AOT. Does the board have questions, comments on the 9.6? I'm having some feedback here. And
Someone's speaker is a little bit loud and feeding back through. Someone who's not wearing headphones, I would suggest, I believe. What I would like to know about the 9.6 is where the impact will be. Is this towards the dumpster pad on the east side?
Yeah, if I could, I can't control the site, but if we look at it's a little bit from the dumpster pad down to the edge of a little bit of the grading for the detention pond to the south. So it's along that little bit of strip of that buffer area.
Am I the only one whose the plan is just like refreshing?
Oh, mine is doing that too. Yeah.
I'm seeing the same thing. So reverting to the paper copy.
Connor, can you please stop? Come on.
There you go.
Jeff, you know, I
Don't
wish I
complain,
could.
Jeff. I'm still seeing the old one.
Are you really?
Yes.
We all got complaints.
Yeah. So that little bit of impact is along that edge, and once it was brought to our attention, we submitted that application from planning staff. It's just going to be a little bit of clearing that's in that side that will then all be revegetated. There's no impervious in that buffer.
Can you scroll the plan up a little bit so that it will show that detention pond in the bottom? I think then they could see it.
Yeah, I'm trying to bring it back up so it's not going to be flashing.
How many square feet of are we talking about with the 9.6?
I think I was being a little bit on the high side, but I figured it'd be 500 square feet by the time we're done of some landscaping of just green, you know, where they got to rough grade it and then replant it with loam seed.
Is that shown on the plan?
I don't have the area on the plan. I didn't know it needed to be on the plan. I can add that to the final plan.
I'm just looking for an area of disturbance. I don't know if I know where it is.
Right here, see the dotted line?
Okay.
That's the buffer.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that right there, that's the
Gotcha.
disturbance.
All right. Gotcha. Any other further questions on the 9.6?
I don't know.
All right, I would, at this time, entertain a motion to grant the 9.6 special permit for temporary impact into the wetland buffer of approximately 500 square feet.
Oops, I have a question. Did we reopen the public hearing on this?
We haven't opened public hearing yet. I thought we had to address the 9.6 first.
That would be part of the application, though.
So
Yeah, we have to open
you
a
recommend,
public hearing on the 9/6, don't we?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, you need to open up so that the public has a chance to comment before you vote.
okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's why I'm here.
Thank you. Keep me straight. All right, at this time, we'll open public comment in regards to the 9.6 special permit. If there's anyone out there that has questions, comments, or concerns, we'll take them now. I'll remind you, *6 to unmute your phone or click on the icon, or you can also type into the conversation bar if that's easier. Anyone? Hearing no questions or comments. We'll close public comment. Any further questions by the board before we have a vote? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the 9.6 special permit.
I make a motion that we approve the 9.6 special permit for a temporary disturbance.
I second.
Motion by Steve Diamond, seconded by Jeff Brand. Donna,
Masucci, aye.
Allard,
Allard, aye.
Brand,
Brand,
Diamond,
Diamond, aye.
Jennison, aye. The 9.6 special permit is granted. Moving on.
Jamie, why don't you address the 2 waivers next, and then we'll make sure you've gotten all those items out of the way.
Oh, I'm looking for, where are they?
Oh, well,
I don't know as though I see the waivers.
Yeah, well, that brings up an issue.
Oh, here we
So
go.
waivers came in yesterday after we got the packages.
Correct.
And then the staff had to scramble to get us back comments, review these things and give us back comments this afternoon via email. I think there's a short-term and long-term issue here. The long-term issue is every once in a blue moon, somebody threw something in at the last minute for us to consider, which was usually minor. However, this has gotten to be more the rule than the exception these days. And I think that we have to talk about putting a stop to this over the long term. This does not getting things via email the day before a meeting or on the day of a meeting is unacceptable. People have to work. People, they can't plan. They can't be just sitting there waiting 24 hours a day for something to come in by email and jump on it before the meeting and have time to consider it, look up the regulations. I just think we're going to have to put our foot down here and stop this.
Yeah, I think that's something we should talk about after and looking at the regulations and see if it's
Okay.
something we can discuss.
So now the short-term implications of this are, though, have people been able to read, have time to consider, look up the regulations to be able to comment and consider these?
I think,
Masucci, have you had time to look at these and consider?
Sorry, no, I haven't. I work. I did get this once I got home. Try to print it out. So no, I haven't.
Steve Diamond, have you?
I did manage to get a pretty good look at it. While I'm not an engineer, I did some reading. I feel
Donna
about as
Masucci
Is
prepared
now
as I'm
exiting.
going to get to be. I feel somewhat prepared, but more time would have helped probably.
Ron Allard, how was this for you?
I had a chance to look at them before the meeting, so as a retired guy.
Yeah, I know. You and I are retired, but everybody
no,
else.
Jeff, I appreciate your comments. I don't know as though anyone's done anything wrong.
Well,
Is the
wait a
point.
minute. I'm not saying anybody's done anything wrong, but if what
Right,
we're
so I think we can address this for future to sit here and try and say that it was inappropriate or not enough time. I mean, are you saying that we should not move on these waivers because there's not enough time to consider them?
if the answer from a majority of the board was they had not had time to consider them, then yeah, that would be exactly what I'm saying. However, that's why I was polling the board to see who had an opportunity to review these things. And it sounds like, with the exception of Donna Masucci, that everybody had an opportunity. So we could potentially move forward. What Donna Masucci cares to do is up to her. She could recuse herself, or if she can ask sufficient questions. She has the documents now. Maybe
Donna Masucci
is now joining.
So, but yes, that's exactly what I was saying. But now that we've determined that enough people have seen this, they have a quorum, then we could move.
Yeah, and Jeff, I think it was discussed. I know that the meeting went till midnight, but I think it was brought up towards the end of the meeting. And then I did have to kind of chase down the actual waiver request. But I do believe the board discussed it briefly at the last meeting.
Well, that may have been discussed briefly, but that's not the same as having the waiver request in hand.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with the principle and having time. I guess my question is, I mean, at any point we can say we hadn't enough time to look at something and make a decision based on that. I just don't know as though now's, the 12-inch pipe one is the one that comes up pretty regularly. Right. So,
and I pulled the board, and the board, people had time. I wanted to assure that people had an opportunity so they could participate and have a quorum. So it appears we have that, so we can move on. I just wanted to ensure people had adequate time to be able to participate.
all right. Any questions, comments on the waivers? The first waiver is 4771. The project has two pipes of 12-inch diameter designed for control flows to accommodate the flow of stormwater through the pipe. The pipes can be easily cleaned if required for maintenance. Installation of culverts of this size will not be detriment to the project. Those are the comments from the planner. The members of the board have any questions for Jeff in regards to those culverts?
So are we talking about, I see 12-inch CPP near the dumpster pad towards the back of the building. I see a line there. I assume that's one of the ones we're talking about. Where's the other one?
The other one is for the pond that goes out towards the right-of-way and under the new roadway.
Mm-hmm. What we're dealing with right now is depth of coverage, right?
No, actually, we're dealing with the pipe diameter side.
Damn, I thought it was 18 inches at where it crosses the road.
There's two of them right there.
There's two, yeah. There's one that crosses underneath the driveway into the town hall, on town hall property. And then there's one that discharges from a structure off of the property into the ditch line of the new roadway that's going to go up the hill.
Okay.
So if you look at pond 11P, where test pit 1 is, it's the outlet from the catch basin that flows from that out to the ditch line. That's that's one. And then the other one is the outlet culvert that has controlled flow from the pond 21P, which is on the southern side of the parking lot.
Ah, got it. So how many square feet of impervious surface is being drained by this pipe?
Which one?
Each of them.
Oh, I'd have to get back in the numbers, but we look at, quarter of an acre, but it's controlled flow through that because those are outlet pipes from 2 detention ponds. So we have controlled orifices in that structure that will retain the flow. So we hold it in place long enough before it goes through and into that 12-inch pipe on the way out.
So you're saying essentially you're buffering the impact of that flow because there's the volume of the pond.
That's
right?
correct. Yep.
So how much volume is in that pond?
Oh, I've got to dig out the numbers and pull it up. I don't know off the top of my head. I have it in the stormwater report. I'd have to go through that. And dig that.
But the entrance to those from the pond, of course, to a diameter that's significantly less than the diameter of the pipe. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yep. So what we do is we put a cap on the outlet pipe. The pipe exits through a structure, so any sediment that builds in the structure, we can clean that out. There's a cap on the outlet pipe that controls that flow, and that cap has holes drilled in it that are smaller than the pipe itself, so that water can be controlled out of that structure. So by having the smaller pipe of a 12-inch diameter, it doesn't warrant the additional cost to have an 18-inch pipe underneath that area, and it's not impacted by frost or flow, hydraulic flows or anything like that.
There is a requirement for flow. Does that apply here, that there's a minimum requirement for flow rate?
Yeah, the 2 feet per second. Yeah, our flows would meet that through the pipe.
Even with orifices, you'll be.
That's correct, because what that flow does is there to help scour the pipe. So if any sediment gets in it, it cleans the pipe.
Right.
That's why you want a minimum flow.
Okay, so by using a 12-inch pipe, because of the orifices, which actually effectively reduces the area of the pipe, the use of an 18-inch, your orifices are significantly less than that diameter, so that isn't going to be an impediment to flow, and it's not going to, and the flow rates will be sufficient to keep the sediment out. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Any other questions? Hearing none, would entertain a motion to grant a waiver for 477 Parents 1 pipe diameter.
I make a motion that we waive the pipe diameter requirement for this project. Ron Allard?
And we have to have a reason, right?
Yes, please.
To do so would be an ownership of hardship and meets the spirit and other regulations.
I have it on the staff recommendations if you want.
I'm happy to use that language, Marcia.
I know which one did I put? Oh, I think I put specific circumstances relative to the subdivision. A condition of the land in such subdivision indicate the waiver will properly carry out the spirit and intent of the regulation.
Perfect.
All right, I'll second it.
Motion by Ron Allard, second by Jeff Brand. Masucci?
Masucci, aye.
Diamond?
Diamond, aye.
Jennison, aye. Allard?
Allard, aye.
And Brand?
Brand, aye.
Waiver is granted for 4771. Next waiver, 477 Parents 3. Minimum depth coverage over storm drain lines of 36 inches. You want to speak to that, Jeff, on the reason for the waiver?
Yeah, the reason for the waiver is that if we look again at those two structures for the outlets, it's due to site conditions and site grading. It's pretty much impractical to have an outlet for a detention pond to maintain 3 feet of cover without building up or having a lot of extra fill and a head wall. And for these situations, for this outfall, we'll look at the detention pond that's on the outside, on the southern side of the property, and that's similar to the other detention pond. Maintaining 3 feet of cover would require additional earth impact, additional resources that really practically aren't there's not an engineering basis to have that improvement over these pipes that are out in the field that are outlets for drainage structures.
Board, have any questions on that waiver for depth coverage?
So it sounds like you're saying where you're asking for the waiver, there will never be a large heavy truck.
That's right. Yeah, there's not going to be. We don't want heavy trucks driving through the detention ponds. We don't on those outlets on there and that. And even we have cover over the pipe to make sure that's protected from that. And the pipes are strong enough. The corrugated plastic pipe is more than adequate to carry a heavy truckload with less than 3 feet of cover. And most pipes can handle heavy truckloads with 1 foot of cover on them.
The other thing that I was reading, apparently in some soil types, freezing and thawing can the expansion can cause problems. That's
yeah. That is true, but when we look at what we have, the soils that we're going to use for our pipe bedding for our culverts, we have strict controls on what material needs to go in and around those pipes to make sure that they are bedded properly and in place at the right elevation so that the whole drainage system works. Not only when it's initially constructed, but 20 years down the road.
I assume that means more sandy type material.
Correct. A gravelly type of material, which is a lot of the basis of what we have out here, that we can use a lot of this on-site material as backfill, which is good. But yes, we don't want organics. We don't want any clay materials to be used as backfills around any kind of pipe, building, any kind of structure.
All right. I think that answers my question. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Looking for a motion on waiver 477 parents 3.
I make a motion that we approve this waiver because special circumstances relative to the subdivision or conditions of the land in such subdivision indicate that a waiver will properly carry out the spirit and intent of the regulations.
I second.
Motion by Ron Allard, seconded by Jeff Brand. Masucci,
Masucci, aye.
Diamond,
Aye.
Brand,
Brand, aye.
Allard,
Allard, aye.
Jennison, aye. Waiver 477 parents 3 is granted. All right. Board, have any more questions?
This is Ron again. I know I'm alone on this, but I still am not on board for the lighting level. I think if the town hall doesn't fall into the category of civic center, I don't know what will. So I still am concerned about that. But that said, it will not prevent me from, it's not enough for me to throw myself in front of a bus or anything like that.
I appreciate where you're coming from, Ron, about that. It's not quite the same as just an office building, which is 9 to 5. This is a little different. At the same time, I appreciate what everyone else has said as well.
Well, I think, what would fit in the civic center category if not this? I can't think of anything. If this doesn't fit, I don't know what would.
I think a 30,000 seat concert venue, by my definition, is a civic center. I certainly think this falls more in line with a church or a neighborhood shopping, and I'm not making an argument for low lighting levels, but I think the high is certainly for something of a much larger proportion in my mind, and I could be wrong, but that's
civic
just...
recreational center is a separate category in the high definitions. It says major cultural or civic center. It also says civic recreational center. So, if you look at civic center, to me, a town hall falls under that. I just can't get around that. So just want to put on the record.
I appreciate that.
So while we're thinking about this, it sounds like from what Marcia was saying is the new gas station has basically the same sort of level of lighting that the town hall will have. So we can look at that and get a better sense.
I think for me, I think it's just I don't want to make it seem like we gave the town extra consideration for this. I think we should make sure that we follow the regulations as best we can. And for me, it just falls in that category. That's where I'm coming down.
All right.
Well, question, Ron. So the town is currently renting space in a building from somebody. So the person erected the building with the intent, to rent it out as commercial space. The town's been renting it. So how is that? So wonder if somebody else did the same thing. If we were talking about that building and they were going to build a building and they said it's going to be an office building and then we're going to rent it out. How is that different from the new town offices being proposed than what we have now?
I think in one case, I don't think it's the same thing, Jeff. To me, if you build a office building and you happen to rent out of the town, I think, that is not part of the approval process. If it's an office building, and then later on the town becomes a tenant, you can't, retroactively apply the standards. But I think this is a building that the town is going to own. It's clearly going to be the town hall. It's going to be owned by the town hall. And I think it fits under the category of civic center. I mean, that's just where I come down.
I'm looking at the lighting standards are really predicated on what is the use of the facility, what's the size and use. And when I look at it, if I look at from the aspect of just think about what happens. Somebody builds a building and that building, according to our regulations, the medium standard would apply. Now the town moved in there and occupied it, but I'm just thinking from a practical, technical standpoint, what's the difference? Just because the town owns it doesn't mean that it's not an office building.
I agree with Ron. I don't think it's relative because they don't use this space the same way they're going to use the new space they're constructing. We don't have the meeting facility space in this building that the new space proposes to have, larger groups and stuff. These are office buildings, that's why we don't have our meetings here. So I don't know as though it's the same in that regards. And I don't know as though we have to convince Ron otherwise either at this point.
If I could just weigh in for a second.
Sure.
In the building codes, these other places where you had your high levels, those would be considered a place of assembly where you have a lot of people going in and stuff all the time. Now, the other ones that you have more in the medium ones are more the business use, and the town hall falls under that B category as a business use by building codes because of the volume of people that go through. So I think if you look at this and then you look at the whole thing with the lower level ones, it all comes down to the volume of people going through and trying to make it safe, for that amount of people for the time that it's used.
Right. And that's kind of where I was landing. With high, it's major cultural or civic centers. And, and I'm thinking Foxborough Stadium. I mean, it's quite a jump to go from that level of use and that many people to, hospital parking lots. And, because hospital parking lots is pretty high use. And I think that's, more relative to the use we're looking at as opposed to, regional shopping centers. That's, Fox Run Mall, where you have, Christmas shopping hours with thousands of people packed in there and that massive parking areas where safety is a concern. So that's, I kind of draw that distinguishing there,
For me, Jamie, it's more, I think I'm okay with the medium lighting level. I just can't get by how you can't call us a civic center. That's where I get hung up.
Basically size. I don't think, how many proposed people do you put in this building as opposed to a civic center where, it's literally 10,000 people? If this was
But
a 10,000,
but Jim, this is Barrington regulations. You know,
Right.
what does Civic Center mean in Barrington? To me, it's got to be town hall. I mean, I'm okay with, medium light levels. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know how you can get around not calling this a Civic Center.
I think that's,
I think that goes by a
it's a
definition.
civic, right, it's a civic use, but it's not civic center by definition. You know,
A civic center is used by citizens.
Civic use, right? But that's what I'm saying. That the civic center in Portland is used by citizens, but it's not a public facility. It's a concert venue, or a major league sporting event, or hockey arena. Certainly not 50 people joining to have a planning board meeting. That's where I draw the distinction.
Yeah, but we're talking about light levels here. This is a small parking lot. You know what I mean? So
right,
saying we can't put in the higher light levels is I think is not reasonable to say that. So it comes down to me is what is the appropriate definition for this building? And to me, it's Civic Center. It falls there.
Yeah, I think for me the word would be community, which is a smaller word than the civic use. And if we look at the map, there's only a few spots that fall below that, that 0.9 really. A couple on the outliers as you drive into the driveway. There's a couple spots there, but around the parking spots, it's all above 0.9. Some of the outliers on the outside of the on the roadway is 0.7, 0.8, 0.8, 0.6 around the perimeter of the parking area, but not where you're parking necessarily. And then up by the dumpster, where they're going to make it a little bit brighter, it's all above 0.9. So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know how other people feel, but we're pretty much at the 0.9 that you talk about, Ron. I think we're pretty close. Other than like 7 or 8 targeted spots that are 0.7, 0.7, in those 3 spots that they're going to address over by the dumpster. So I think we're really close to the 0.9.
The other thing you want to,
I don't want to drive this to another midnight meeting, but to me, it's just a question of doing our job. Are we cutting the town hall a break? Do they belong in the Civic Center category or not? And if they don't, fine. But I don't understand how they don't.
Can I add one thing? When you're looking at, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So when you're looking at the overall town hall, because I never, differentiated between it, whether it was town or not town. But one of the things that they did look at had to do with the use in regard to trip generation, not necessarily lighting, but trip generation. And what you're looking at for this particular type of building and what we're doing is 89 trips per day and an average of 13 per hour. So the level of use of the building would not, I think, fall into the level that that was trying to be addressed, that Ron was thinking of. This is a fairly low-key building.
For me, it's not that the medium level is appropriate for the building. It's just to me, explain to me how it doesn't fall in the Civic Center category. That's all I'm looking for. Tell me why we don't have to apply that standard to it, because I don't know how we can do that.
I want to find it as a civic center, but that's my opinion.
Okay, I'm going to let me try this. I'm both going to defend Ron here, and then turn things around though and point out an important word we're ignoring. First off, according to the architects, I'm at a major architectural website. The definition of a civic center is a network of spaces or buildings that provide essential services to a city or town. It can include everything from government offices and public meeting spaces to free classes and memorials honoring important members of the community. So by that definition that's used by architects, that would support what Ron is saying as far as its classification would go. Now, with that said, I want to go back and note one important word here, and that is a major cultural or civic center. I would, given the size of this building, if you were talking about you went up to Portland and talked about Merrill Hall. You talked about going to Boston and go down there. Then yeah, those would be major civic centers. I don't think how many square feet are we talking about here?
Yeah, Jeff, let me stop you there because the major doesn't apply to civic centers. It says civic recreational facilities, comma, major cultural or civic centers. So
Right.
civic center stands on its own.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does.
Just look at the words. Civic recreational facilities, comma, major cultural or civic centers.
Or they're separate.
Stop. No, it's not. Major applies to both cultural and civic centers.
No, it doesn't.
Depends how you parse it.
No, it doesn't.
No, you go by the punctuation, right? Comma after the facilities, major cultural or civic centers, comma, regional shopping centers, comma. So major cultural or civic centers, those are both within the commas. That's one phrase.
If I say or, it's one or the other. It can be either one.
Let me ask
Chair,
Jeff.
can you chime in? Mr. Chair, come on. We could debate this all night long.
Absolutely.
He already suggested, Ron already said he accepts it. He does not agree, but he does accept it. Can we come to the agreement that we don't agree, we agree that we don't agree, and move on?
I think that would be appropriate. And the other option is to see if I counted 15 spots that don't meet the 0.9 criteria. I don't know to the extent that which it would take to illuminate those spots, another 0.2. But I think we're at the point where if there's no other concerns other than the lighting, are we ready to take a vote to approve this site review?
So just for a point of clarification, Jamie, if we set aside the lighting question right now, we're making a final decision on this right now?
I believe that's where we're at. Would you concur, John?
Unless there's another issue that the board members haven't brought up that they feel needs to be answered.
Did all the board members read through the draft notice of decision? Can't remember if I did adjust it with the waivers. The other question I did include something about if there was any easement language that was needed, either where I know the Conservation Commission had brought up, making sure that there was access to the open space. The other thing I thought of, where this is going to be a private road until the town takes it over, just to make sure that there was adequate access to that. But I didn't have specifics on it.
I remember talking about that briefly about, there being enough parking spaces in the corner there by the detention pond. Did anybody feel there was more than needed than for access to the open space?
I don't think you need an easement for the Conservation Commission to use a public facility.
Well, I wasn't, see, at this point, it's not really public. That was my in between.
But it will be after they sign do whatever paperwork's necessary.
Right, and that's going to be at the end of the final phase, correct, Marcia?
Well, I just wanted to make sure cover all the bases when, the road hasn't yet been accepted by the town, and, people are walking from town hall up through the open space. I just wanted, and that's why I left it kind of open to let the attorney, decide what the final language is. But I just wanted to make sure everything was, covered. So that's why it's in the notice of decision. It's not specific.
Well, at least at this point, there is no paperwork. Nothing's been turned over. The town owns the land. they're going to construct it if the town chooses, and it'll be approved by the selectmen, that there will be some kind of instrument by which the Conservation Commission takes it over. I'm not sure that that's something that we would deal with at this point, because at this point, none of that exists. It's something to be talked about in the future.
Yeah, this application has to do with building the town hall, not the subdivision.
Right, and that public land won't be public land until that subdivision's built out, correct?
Right, and this one was just, the council shall approve all easements language as needed. I mean, if they don't need any, they don't need any, but I wanted to make sure I had it in there just in case they did.
All right.
So I guess part of the question,
Where is that in the notice of decision? I'm looking at the one. I printed it out. I didn't.
Number 4.
Yeah,
Number 4, Jeff.
Got it. Thanks.
so what wasn't clear to me was around, will the public have a legal right to access the open space in the interim of the development process?
It's not public space until the development is done.
Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Once Mr. Falzoni finishes his development and hands that public space over to the public, then it would be, it's, you know, well, I'm sure he doesn't want people up there hiking around while he's building roads and things of that nature. So it wouldn't be prudent on his part for insurance purposes, I wouldn't think.
I see.
So I can read the draft notice of decision. And then we can go from there. Dear applicant, this is to inform you that the Barrington Planning Board has conditionally approved your application referenced above. All of the precedent conditions below must be met by the applicant at the expense of the applicant prior to the plans being certified by the planning board. Certification of the plans is required prior to the commencement of any site work or recording of any plans. Once these precedent conditions are met and the plans are certified, the approval is considered final. Please note, if all of the precedent conditions are not met within 6 calendar months to the day, the board's approval will be considered to have lapsed, unless a mutually agreed upon extension has been granted by the board. Add to the following plan notes. Waiver was granted from section 477, parents 3, minimum depth of cover for storm drain lines of 36 inches. A waiver was granted from 477 parents 1, site plan regulations, minimum pipe diameter storm drain systems to allow for 2 12-inch diameter pipes where 15 inches required. I believe we also want to add, update the underground power location in lieu of the 2 telephone poles.
Okay.
Add erosion control indications to the legend.
Yeah, why wouldn't we just say all utilities shall be run underground?
We can say that. Okay, we can.
Oh, just change C to be all utilities underground.
Sure.
Yep. We want to update the lighting controls to meet the 0.6 in those in those areas by the dumpster that we discussed. Update the lighting plan to include wall fixtures. Oops, sorry.
Slow down. Lighting controls. Okay, update lighting controls. And what was the one after that?
Jeff had mentioned the fixtures for the wall-mounted fixtures on the lighting plan.
Yes, the lighting plan has to include building elevations and outside lights and illumination. So I mean, basically, it's upgrade the lighting plan to conform with Barrington site review regulations.
Got that, Marcia?
Lighting plan to conform. Okay. Site regulation.
Revise the following plan notes. Add the New Hampshire DES alteration of terrain permit number. Add the New Hampshire DES subsurface bureau CA number. Add the New Hampshire DES water supply permit number.
Hold on, I have a question on that for Jeff.
Yep.
I wasn't exactly sure whether they needed a permit from water supply permit number or not. Am I
No,
correct?
not for this project.
No,
Nope.
okay.
So we'll
So we can
strike
cross
that one.
that one off.
Yeah, we'll strike the water supply permit.
Yeah.
Make the following plan changes. Enlarge approval block to 3.5 inches wide by 3 inches high. Revise storm water management report in page 2 of 3 to state Barrington, not Northwood. Add monument to the plan 423. Add 2 bike racks to the plan 414.4, parents 3, parents D. Town council shall approve all easement language as needed, including possible access. Any outstanding fees shall be paid to the town. Prior to obtaining board signature, the applicant shall submit 3 complete paper print plan sets and supporting documents as required in Article 3 with a letter explaining how the applicant addressed the conditions of approval. This shall include final and complete reports for all items submitted during review for the town of Barrington's file. The chairman shall endorse 3 copies of the approved plans, meeting the conditions of approval upon receipt of an executed bond for all improvements, excluding buildings. The town shall retain a signed and approved reproducible 11 by 17 in PDF format with supporting documents for town records. With no active and substantial work required under this approval has commenced upon the site within 2 years from the date the plan is signed, this approval shall expire. An extension not to exceed 1 year may be granted by majority vote of the board, so long as it is applied for at least 30 days prior to the expiration date. The board may grant only one such extension for any proposed site plan. All other plans must be submitted to the board for review to ensure compliance with these and other town ordinances. Active and substantial work is defined in this section as being the expenditure of at least 25% of the infrastructure improvements required under this approval. Infrastructure shall mean in this instance the construction of roads, storm drains, and improvements indicated on the site plan. RSA 674-39. So,
Jamie, I just thought of something else on the up on 3 plan changes. I had mentioned before we need to correct the legend on the plan.
Yep, for the erosion.
Erosion control.
Yep, we mentioned that one. Yep. Did you get that one, Marcia, in there?
Okay, so under plan changes, we want to add
Fix the legend. Update legend to include erosion control symbol.
Hey, Jamie, this is Ron. Should there be in the plans any indication of signage?
Not
question.
necessary. That's a separate application.
Okay.
It used to be part of your site plans and you took it out and you put it in zoning.
Right. Yeah.
So
when we
now-
do sign regs. Yeah.
Yeah, so now if they meet the regulation, code enforcement can approve it without going through us. Right?
Okay.
That's correct. And if they want something different than in the regulations, they have to go to the zoning board.
All right, any other questions?
Well, I'll make my one last. I would like to see a waiver for the lighting requirement from high to low, but I'm willing to give up on that.
All right. We'll let that one fly. Hopefully it won't keep you up at night. I think, so I believe we're at this point, we're looking for a motion to approve the site review. Is that the right word I'm looking for? Approve the
I will make a motion to approve project application 223-26C-1-RC SDA O-20SR for Barrington Town Hall.
I second that.
a motion made by Jeff Brand and seconded by Steve Diamond. Masucci,
Masucci, aye.
Allard,
Allard, aye.
Jennison, I, Brand,
aye.
and Diamond.
Diamond, aye.
All in favor? The application, I don't know what to call it. Site review is granted. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Good luck. All right. Thank you, Jeff.
You got it. Thank you so much. Have a good
Have a
night.
great night.
You know, one of these days, I'm gonna make a motion and then I'm gonna vote against it. Just,
I don't know if you can do that. Can you?
yes, you
Technically?
can.
No, you can do that. You can do that.
Yeah.
And then you have to turn the whole thing back around again, jeez.
All right. What do we got next? I skipped that.
Building permit on a class 6 road, a private road.
All right. Every time I put that agenda down.
Patrick and Melissa Lassard.
Yeah, the
All right.
building permit.
Building permit. One of these been referred to by the select board. They want a building permit, private road. It's on Long Shores Drive.
The road agent went out to Long Shores Drive.
Yeah.
It's an existing house. They have combined lots 107 and 108. This will not add any additional traffic to the road. The concern that I have for the proposed driveway width is that it allows for a definite low point. Make sure the driveway is pitched to the right to keep water from backing up on their front lawn. Any gravel used in the driveway in this area should be 1.5 inch material, coarse enough to keep from washing across into wetlands. The entire length of Long Shores Drive is in very poor shape and averages between 20 to 22 feet wide, etc. If the board approves this building permit, the homeowners will be responsible to fix any damage to the road due to construction traffic. It would be my recommendation that after the completion of the project, the potholes in the paved portion are filled with cold patch and the gravel section of the road gets graded from 759 Long Shores Drive to the beginning of Long Shores Drive. The homeowner is a member of the association. Anybody have anything to add?
So this is a very similar situation to Berry River Road. It was clearly originally developed as summer cabins, and there's a lot of sharp turns, sort of an unnecessary number of turns, and they're rather sharp. And we know the condition of the road is quite poor. It's very long, and even when you get to the end, it's quite remote. There are 3 roads that run kind of parallel that don't connect to each other. Personally, what I think is what our recommendation to the select board should be is that they should either not approve building permits unless some of these both condition and configuration issues of roads are going to be corrected, or I would like to see the town attorney or other relevant party come up with a scenario, an appropriate mechanism by which someday these things will be corrected. These things essentially being not too many turns, not as many turns as there are, that those turns are not as sharp, that the road is in better condition, and that there's more than one way out. We've seen in the news recently in Maine, they had a severe snowstorm, and they had high wind warnings, and they had a flood watch, and oh, by the way, they also had this virus thing going on. So you can have a lot of things happening at the same time that all make the situation more complicated. And if you have one terrible road, only one way out, that's not great. This is going from being seasonal situation to being ever more year-round residents, a growing population of year-round residents. And at some point, the roads need to be made appropriate for that.
I think we've pounded our head against this wall many times. I do love the conversation every time it comes up. I still have yet to find a path to improving those roads and infringing on the other homeowners along the way.
Well, essentially,
I'd like to make a comment here. I was on the committee when this whole private road thing came into being. And back then, Long Shores and Berry River Road were the poster childs for what everybody kept talking about. Those roads right now are substantially better than what they used to be before. And those people were living out there full time, even at that point in time. So there's a point where maybe it's not perfect. Maybe it's not making the perfect road, but it's making the situation way a lot better than what it was previously.
Yeah, and I just don't know what the fix is, you know.
Well, I want to say that I live on Baxter Lane, which is waterfront, and it probably there's still a lot of seasonal people. But when people are improving the houses and they go year round, that does the most for improving the road. So I kind of back up. I see what John's saying. This kind of situation has a tendency to make a situation better, not worse.
Yeah, it's good perspective, I guess. Yeah, if you're just coming there for a couple months in the summer, you don't care about what it's like in the winter and the wet seasons and all that stuff. You're coming in the nice dry summertime.
Yeah, and if you get oil deliveries and stuff in the wintertime, you want to be able to get that stuff. If the road is bad, God forbid you can't get Amazon to deliver, but you also can't get oil deliveries and stuff like that too. So when you go year round, I think it changes the dynamic a little bit and helps things.
And when people get worried about getting oil truck and gas trucks and stuff in there, what they're doing to maintain the road is actually making it so you can get a fire truck in too.
Yeah.
And I appreciate your concern, Stephen. I think you've got a great, idea there. I can't see a pathway, and I don't know as though this is the forum, to address it.
I'm sure there is a mechanism that the town government could utilize, that the attorney could find if it were a priority. I mean, I've been to some of these sites in the past, and they have mirrors on the sharp turns, and they have kept all the trees, all the foliage really in tight because they want to keep things nice and natural, but you have very little sight lines. So between all these things, personally, I think a growing permanent population, yes, there's somewhat of a mechanism that makes the road better to some degree, but also the need is different.
Yeah, but Steve, on my road, for example, if I'm going to improve my lot, my ability to fix the road or the sharp turns, I don't have that ability. Those right of ways and that land belongs to somebody else.
The only thing I can think,
put the burden on this person to fix that problem when she has no control over it. I think that's the problem.
The only thing I can think of that could possibly be is to say, if the permit is given, you will deed X amount of feet of your frontage on the road for future road upgrades and create a new road right away type.
Yeah, but the problem is, Jamie, the problem that Steve's talking about, those sharp turns and other things, they're probably down the road someplace where my lot doesn't touch.
Right.
We looked into that in the past. That's considered extortion.
To say
you have to give us to get, that is extortion, and that's how the attorney put it to us.
Okay.
Unauthorized taking, I think it's a good official word.
Well, I guess certainly not being a lawyer, I don't know the difference between the unauthorized taking and the meeting regulations. There's a line to walk there to say that you want to build a house on a non-conforming lot. We make you do certain things. You got to move your house back off the water. Is no different than saying now you got to give a little bit of frontage to the road. I don't know, but
those things, Jamie, are on my lot and I control. Down the 200 feet down the road, there's a sharp turn. I can't fix that. It doesn't touch my property.
No, I'm not saying that. But if you institute a policy that says when you upgrade yours, you create a 7-foot buffer for future road improvements. That way, when 30 people later do it, now there's a stretch of road that can be improved because everybody's upgraded over those last 10 years. And now we have 200 feet that we can improve. And that might encompass a curve. And then 5 years later, 8 other people upgrade and they've given portions. And now that section can be improved.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Again, not probably the forum to do it, but I think it's not a bad idea and it's a noble cause. At some point too, as like Steve says, these become more permanent and not camp roads anymore. But in the interest of time, does everybody agree to pass along the standard letter to the select board with the road agent's recommendations?
I thought the road agent did a relatively good job, and I'm ready to move on if you want.
All right, let's open public comment first. Anybody?
There is no public comment on this, but go ahead. Oh, you can.
All right. All right, well, we'll skip public comment because the outcome will be the same.
I have a question though, because I did do like a memo for this. Did it actually get, because I had to email so many things like through 2 different accounts. Did you get a memo from me on this one?
I just
Masha,
got,
Yeah.
I sent the memo back to you. You have the wrong name on it.
Oh, I'm glad you did.
Yeah.
Oh.
So
So
I
the
didn't
answer to
forward
your,
it to the
So now
board.
I can modify it. So it's, what's the name? It's obviously not Hines.
No, it's
Lassard.
Patrick and Melissa Lassard.
yeah.
Sorry, okay.
So the answer to your question, Marcia, is no, I did not see that memo. No.
Okay, good. Well, that's what you do when you kind of cut and paste and try it. Thank you, Barbara. So now I can amend it.
All right, so let's entertain a motion to send the typical letter to the select board with the road agent's recommendations.
And I did incorporate all the road agent's comments, so we're good there.
All right, we have a motion.
Can I get away with so moved?
Can we? I don't, we need a motion and a vote?
It's just a recommendation to the select board. They are the ones that have the authority to vote on it.
All right, so we'll just, all in favor, say aye.
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 Sounds like everybody. Passing along to the select board. All right, there's nothing, I see nothing else in the stack. We have, Donna, did you still want to discuss the farmer's market?
Of course I do. I waited the last time until 12 o'clock.
All right,
Yes.
what do you got?
I'd like to do a farmer's market at BBS. If everybody knows where Commerce Way is, BBS is right behind Cozy's Pizza. Our driveway is like an L. You go in one way, you come out the other way behind the building. I'd like to propose a farmer's market, having the table set up along the driveway, plenty of room. Called about a porta potty, make sure that people have a place to go. What else? I want to do it on, I'd like to do it on a Saturday, maybe a Sunday. The only reason I'm saying Sundays because Bella, associate buyers across the street from my building, they do have truck traffic on Saturdays until 12 o'clock. I think that might be an interference. I'm being very transparent with the board, letting you know that. I know I do have to send out paper forms to everybody around, so they can be at the, whatever you call it, the meeting. What are your recommendations? What do you see? What do you want from me?
Donna, Donna, quick question. This is Ron Allard.
Yeah.
Don't we have a farmer's market in Cross 125 in the theater? Isn't there a farmer's market there once in a while?
I see it every so often. I don't think it's anything. I want it to be all the time, like 5 months out of the year. I do see that every so often. I also see people put up little yard sale tables up there.
Well, we approved a plan to put one behind Dante's.
Yeah.
But it
never
didn't go
came to
through
fruition.
because DOT was part of that.
Yeah, she had a curb cut issue.
Oh.
Yeah.
The thing
And don't
across
I
from
see
the-
something once in a while across from Caleb's? Does something happen there once in a while?
Yeah, they used to
that
be.
little
Yeah.
used to be.
So
Marcia, doesn't this
There-
qualify as a minor site plan?
Yeah, but you handle your minors and majors exactly the same way. A lot of municipalities have a minor site plan, can be approved by staff if it meets certain conditions, but the Barrington hasn't done that.
Yeah, I know. Marcia and I kind of look at that. That's not as easy as it sounds to change. But isn't that what we did for the farmer's market behind Dante's? Wasn't that a minor site plan, came to the board and they just had a sketch and we talked about hours, parking, and
Sure. Yeah. She actually had a plan from before, so she had to start something to start with. But yeah, in my opinion, it does need some type of site plan.
Right. Well, my suggestion, I guess, would be, can we give Donna a copy of what we approved for the farmer's market behind Dante's, and that gives her kind of a guide as to what we need.
And
So
she
are you
already has a
suggest-
site plan for her building.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Are you suggesting she can use her original site plan, just mark what she's
Yeah.
gonna set up, and that's it, that she needs for an application?
Yeah, because she has a site plan for her daycare.
Right. So isn't that what we did with Dante's? Is
Pretty close.
yeah.
Yeah.
They just
That's
add-
the direction she's looking for by this meeting.
Yeah. And I would say, focus on dumpster, because I think, knowing where there's a dumpster on, and that should be on your site plan, right? I guess you got one for your daycare.
I do have
And-
one, yes. I do.
And where you're gonna put the porta potty.
Where the tables would be set up.
Yeah, and where the tables would be set up, and then hours of operation, and yeah. And yeah, like Jeff
And
said,
where cars are going to park.
yeah.
I'm excited
Yeah,
about
well,
this prospect. Donna, sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no. I'm planning the parking to be on Commerce Way. That's where, like, when my enrichment center has a gathering with the families, we have somewhere from 60 to 80 people come in and they park along the side of Commerce Way.
You
Is
would
that
have
a-
to get permission from the police chief on that because
Is that
Commerce Way,
allowed?
isn't that maintained by the town?
That is maintained by the town.
Okay, well, just to be official, there is no parking on town roads, so, but you can get a waiver from the police chief.
That is a selectman
Okay.
policy, yeah.
Yeah.
And the concern for
Okay.
me, Donna, is just making sure that, pedestrian traffic and vehicle traffic are
Right.
controlled.
Yeah, so I would definitely try to answer that question about parking. Because I know there's a couple other tenants on that road that squabble about parking. So knowing where they're gonna park and if you can park on the road, because if it's every weekend that you gotta get a waiver thing, it might be more work than. So getting a recommendation from the police department.
Right. And a farmer's market usually lasts maybe 4 hours. 5 people come at different times. It's not like everybody, I wouldn't think, would come in at 8 o'clock and everybody leaves at 12 o'clock. I think it's, it gets heavy in the morning, then heavy in the afternoon, from what I see, different farmers markets. But I definitely will go to the police department and see what I can do there, let them know what my intent is, what they need from me.
Yep. And cover your bases. You might as well talk to Chief Walker while you're there. And in case he's got any
Well, I've got a
comments.
cistern, I've got a sprinkler system and a cistern in my in my building now, so
You're all set.
you should be real happy. All set.
All right, any other questions?
Donna, I'm excited by the prospect of a farmer's market arriving finally. Ron, the one across from the theater, I don't think is really a farmer's market. It's just sort of a pop-up of regular commercial food.
Yeah, fiddleheads or something.
Well, Don, I
Yeah.
can tell you I'm not a customer, but my daughter will be thrilled.
That's great.
All right.
That's great. I
Very good.
hope so.
Any
Thank
other
you.
questions, Donna?
No, I think you answered all of this. I will gather all my information and go to Barbara and see what my next step is.
All right, we got to quickly, or maybe not so quickly, meeting minutes for April 7th. Do we want to do those now?
Sure.
Any
Sure.
corrections? Okay, any corrections, notes, comments on that? 23 pages, I believe.
I have,
Comment, it's good to put those last, Jamie, because then no one wants to make corrections.
Right. That was a recommendation by a person smarter than me. Is Jeff still there?
yeah, I'm here.
All right. I didn't
I
see a
have no
picture.
comments.
All right, I didn't see a picture, so I didn't know if I lost you.
But can't see
Anybody else? Well, it changes around, so.
Okay.
Anybody? Nothing?
Good enough.
Hearing no objections, we'll approve the minutes as written.
And just for future reference, I'm still looking at the first project on my screen. So
Hey,
Really?
before we go, we got one more issue to discuss, which is this business of submittals.
All right.
I see the problem as twofold. Number one, I've raised this issue before, but I've been looking at it more recently. First off, you know, when we're sitting here telling people, oh, you got to come up with a real lighting plan, you got to have this, you got to have that. If you go back and look at our regulations, those things are supposed to be in the application in the first place. We shouldn't have to chase it down or make it a condition to add that after we've given an approval. So I think problem number one is I think we need to pay more attention to, you know, determination of completeness of the application. At the meeting, consider acceptance of an application. The board shall determine whether or not the application is complete and vote formal acceptance or rejection of the application accordingly. If the application is incomplete, the board shall notify the applicants under RSA 676:3, specify what would be required to make the application complete. Now, when we have made noises like this in the past with an applicant there, rather than us sending them a letter saying incomplete, then normally they ask for a continuance, they take notes, and they come back to us before we actually consider it. But I think that before we accept an application, I think we need to be more stringent on ensuring that the applications have everything major that we need. You know, if they got to go out and get some documentation, like they've got a, you know, a permit or something, those things wouldn't hold things up. But I think otherwise, I think that's where the problem starts, is we need to be more rigid with accepting applications as complete. And the second thing, though, is if we do, and we ask for additional information, which is what the process should be, once we accept the application, it's complete, we ask questions, we want additional details, we want drawings revised and them to come back to us, then, you know, they're going to have additional submittals. Well, when are we going to accept that? The day before the meeting, the day of the meeting, I think is unacceptable. And I know that in our rules of procedure, when we talk about or application submittals, the approved rules of procedure are all materials to be considered at a board meeting in order to determine whether an application is complete pursuant to the town's subdivision and site plan regulations, internal policies, and RSA 676:4 shall be furnished to the land use office at least 21 days prior to the meeting in which the application will be reviewed for completeness. The land use office shall provide these materials to the board at least 1 week prior to the meeting. So that's for the submittal of the application. But, and so now we're talking about, we've now accepted it, or we're considering things once we've accepted it. But I, you know, so the 21 days really probably isn't applicable in that situation, but certainly we need to get them into the office, I would say a week before the meeting, so they can be part of the package, so that Barbara and Marcia and John are emailing the board members with last minute submittals. It doesn't give them time, they're scrambling. It doesn't give us time to do a proper review and do our job. So, I mean, I don't know exactly how effective it is. We could modify the rules of procedures to include a time limit. So I've said enough, but we got to fix this problem.
I just want to mention one thing before I just, it's with an incomplete, you often say, Jeff, to applicants, you know, have you read our regulations? If we deem an application as incomplete, it falls on us to then specify what would be required to make it complete. You know, so the onus is on us to then tell them what's missing and what they need to do. You know, I think we typically have more of an open dialogue the way we're doing the process. I'm not saying it's right or better, and there could be some improvements, but you know, one of the frequent comments you ask is, have you read our regulations? And you should know this stuff. But that onus does fall on us to then give them, you know, written.
Well, okay, I asked that question at times when we're getting incomplete information, and I ask them if they read the regulations. And in those situations, the answer is often no.
Oh, it's a valid question. I'm not saying it's a valid question, and I'm just saying that you know, do we want to go to a more formal, you know, written response type scenario?
Is now exiting.
Well,
as opposed.
I think there's two issues here. One is the completeness of the application and the timeliness of it.
Yeah.
I think that, Jeff's complaining about, which I agree with. When I pick up my package in the morning, I spend the day reviewing it. And then as I, start to get a little bit ready and I see, I got more documents to review, that's something that I may or may not get to.
Yeah, it's frustrating for sure. What's the rule on that? Currently, is there any time limit? Marsh, can you speak to that?
There isn't any.
So typically it is that 1 week. What I found, like, we had these waivers come in, type of thing, which I think are a little bit more low key. And we only had 2 weeks in between the meetings. We didn't have a full month. And I did have to call, what I mean, or email or whatever, I need the waivers. Barbara had, Barbara, obviously, it's kind of like a chain reaction trying to get it all together and then get it all emailed out. So no, it was inconvenient. Was it overburdensome? No. Every now and then you get something that's a little bit of a glitch. In this particular application, one of the things that I know, Jeff, you pointed out too, was when they submitted the application, it was kind of a little bit piecemeal in the part that they'd left out the actual original subdivision approval. Right. So Barbara made a copy of that. Doesn't always have, we pulled everything together,
Well, Jamie, to answer your question, like I said, usually if somebody submits an application and we start talking about and saying it's missing this and this and this, then we do have the option, obviously, of saying, all right, I'm going to make a motion that we not approve this as complete for the following reasons. However, it's been my experience while I've been on the board that if we start making those kinds of noises, the applicant says, wait a minute, I'd like to continue this, and you give me the list of stuff you want to see, and then I'll come back. So that we don't give them a disapproval that they got to turn around and answer and give to us. And right. I'm kind of okay with that. I'm not okay that we move forward without actually having a complete application. And I think there have been times where we have said, yeah, well, it's close enough. I think you got to stop doing that.
Part of the reason why you're getting some of the stuff a little bit late was as staff were picking up on these missing things. So we're letting the applicant know they're missing, and then they're supplying them a little bit later. And if we didn't say something to them, then they would go to the meeting without it. So it was one of them things where we're trying to help out, but it kind of gets it delayed a little bit, if you know what I'm saying.
Well, I think it's, I'm sorry, I think it's, I'm not blaming, John, you or Mark.
No, I didn't take it as that.
You guys are doing, you're scrambling to try to make things work. The fact is, though, that at some point in time, before the meeting, then we need to say, I'm sorry, this is just too late.
So like run down the scenario today where they submitted that waiver. This was, I think, because it's something we routinely do. It's not so much, but say they submitted something today. Your suggestion is to tell the applicant, civil consultants that say that was too late and reschedule for another meeting.
Yeah, I think we already have laid out in our rules of procedure for when they're submitting an application, when they got to do it. 21 days ahead of time, and the land use office has to get the materials to us 1 week prior. After that submittal, I think we need to set a rule. We can't just spring this on people. We need to then decide, are we going to say, it has to be submitted the Thursday before any new materials to be considered by the board or additional materials have to be submitted by Thursday the week before, a week ahead of time. You got to give the land use office time to respond to these submittals. You got to give time to get them out to us and get them into the packages. But you can't spring it on people. So I think we need to decide as a board what that time period will be, and then we need to inform applicants. This is what the rules are, and so if you don't get these things in, you'll have to ask for a continuance because the board is not going to consider these materials.
Mr. Chair, this is Connor.
Hi, Connor.
You don't have to let me talk if you don't want to. I just have a quick recommendation. So I think you'd want to probably leave the door open to have a situation like you did tonight where, yes, it was short notice, but the majority of the board did have an opportunity to review it, and both the board and the applicant had an opportunity to move forward without delay. So it could be a matter of you have, an item at the beginning of the agenda every meeting of an agenda review, not necessarily, a gross agenda review, but the details of applications where if there is something that came in late, like Jeff said, after a Thursday before a Tuesday meeting, the board could be polled and say, we'd like to add these to the agenda for review tonight. And it would be.
You still there, Connor?
I lost. Oh, no, he disappeared. I think, I think we got the gist of his point. I guess my
That's
perspective.
essentially, Jamie, what I was doing earlier is I was polling the board to see if we were prepared or not. And given that we are, we move forward.
Well,
that's
but
kind
to
of along
support
the
your
same-
point, Jeff, for more time, if I had more time to review I would have pushed for, as you know, as I've made very clear, a waiver on the lighting requirement. I think it belonged in it fit in the high category. I would have been perfectly content in the medium category, but I think it should have had a waiver. I think you fell into that category. You don't think it applies. Tell me why. Ask for a waiver, and you could go down to the medium. But I think that was the right way for that should have gone.
Well, okay, so that application, town hall, good thing Connor dropped off because now we're going to talk about it. The thing is that kind of had both cases. First off, I question whether we should have accepted as complete, seeing as there were things like the lighting plan, the building that were required by our site review regulations that were not submitted. So question number one is, should we have accepted that as complete right in the first place, or said we wanted these things up front? And then they submitted these waivers late yesterday afternoon that then we had to scramble and deal with. I kind of agree with Connor that we could say in these cases, if somebody submits something after, I don't know, within 7 days of the meeting or after Thursdays, that we could do essentially poll the board and say, hey, are we ready to consider this or not? And if people haven't had the opportunity to review materials, we could say, no, we're not going to. I will just reiterate that I think, though, that we need to kind of lay this out on a piece of paper so we can tell the applicants. We don't want to just spring this on them and say, no, too late. And they go, well, where was that written?
Yeah, I guess I think that if we want to change the policy and have it in writing that, submissions will be, a cutoff date. I guess my understanding of the process is that these late submissions are due to a dialogue between staff and applicants. And so staff is informed and they're working on these. They're realizing that there's something missing and they're working with the applicant to get this stuff in before the meeting. So it's not necessarily that they're always blindsided. It's just that they haven't gotten it yet, but they're in an open dialogue with these applicants to get this stuff. I think what's that?
Yeah, well then, okay. And I understand in those cases where the land use office is working with the applicant and they come up with these things, though, then at some point in time, then the land use office also has to say, hey, you know what, we're
Unknown participant is now joining.
We're throwing this at the planning board too late. And so they have to talk with the applicant and decide what they're going to do. Or, we're going to have to decide, listen, we know everybody's trying hard, but in order for us to do our job, we haven't had sufficient time to review the materials, so we can't consider them. I mean, and technically, if it came down to a vote, if you throw something at me on a Tuesday afternoon and I don't get to review it, when it comes time and people want to have a vote, either I'm going to do one of two things. Either I'm going to recuse myself because I don't have sufficient knowledge to act intelligently on the issue, or I'm going to vote against it because I don't have the knowledge. And so therefore I can't say it conforms to the rules.
And I would say that's the right thing to do and certainly within your purview. I mean, if we use these two examples, these are two things that routinely come across, in front of us that I think these two don't take, a huge amount of review to understand, as opposed to if it's something else that is a blind side. So I don't know.
But I agree with you, but however, we've gotten into a bad pattern. We've allowed things to get out of hand.
I do agree with you, Jeff. So I would like there to be some sort of hard cutoff. Most of us here are not getting paid to do this, and we have to plan our lives. And I don't want to be blindsided and have to scramble to be ready, or even feel any pressure to have to do that. We should plan this in a deliberate and appropriate and methodical way. And if it means things take a tiny bit longer, that's just too bad.
Well, I mean, even though I'm retired, I've got grandkids down in Sterling, Massachusetts, and I'm going to go visit, even though we're going to social distance. I got a mother up in Maine. I mean, I do have things to do with my life other than sit around and wait for a waiver to come in.
No one's suggesting that in any way. I'm more than happy to, I think I certainly don't oppose putting in a deadline, and it can be hard and fast.
Well, we can say
it's no, as long as we're not breaking some sort of rule. I mean, it's going to make no difference if that's the new way we do business, that it's a week, it's a week. It makes no difference to me, as long as we're not breaking some sort of rule as far as, holding up the process on someone else's end just because we feel we didn't have time.
Well, Connor makes a point that we got to leave ourselves some wiggle room here. So I could draft something to add to our rules of procedure after the submittal paragraph that, and basically what I'm thinking is we tell people, hey, these have to be submitted to the land use office and be submitted to the board X number of days prior to the meeting. Maybe it's a week. I don't know.
Yep.
If items submitted after that point, the board can decide whether we want to consider them or not.
I think the Thursday prior should be the hard cutoff, at least.
What's that?
In the past, we've run into issues. So let's say the issue that Ron brought up about the lighting plans should show 0.9 and they were showing 0.6. And everybody agreed that it should be a 0.9, but you think 0.6 is adequate, so you were willing to grant a waiver. Now, that would kick it into they could, in the past, they would actually write a waiver right at that meeting, and then you guys would grant the thing because you discussed it. You were the one telling them that you interpret the code different than them, so a waiver would make it work instead of them making 2 weeks to come back on something that you would approve anyways.
Right, which is why I'm saying we leave ourselves the leeway to say anything. Yeah, we drafted waivers right at meetings before, because in going through the approval process, we identify a problem with compliance with the regulations that neither that the land use office, the applicant, and the board had identified before, and so we had to fix that on the fly. So we could leave ourselves the latitude to say anything submitted, drafted up after whatever the time limit is, then it'll be up to the board to decide whether they wish to consider it or not. We could have that discussion.
I think you have that privilege now.
Well, let me ask, does anybody, to me, does anybody think that we need to pick up our packages any earlier than Friday before the meeting? Either you're going to do the work on the weekend, to me, I don't get on it until the weekend or Monday or Tuesday. So
right.
If that's the case, if we need to pick up our packages on Friday, we back into what the staff needs them by, and I think that's the way we should go.
The town hall's not open on Friday. That's why you get them on Thursday.
Yeah. But,
Okay,
but
well,
I want to say, I want you guys to understand too, is because you already have these rules written in, and I am a little bit confused because I thought the waivers that were asked for were extremely minor. And I have not seen this to be an issue because we have clamped down on people submitting and making them wait to have things reviewed. I think we had, the 9.6 was not reviewed. Now, granted, it was really late 2 weeks ago. But I don't see this as an ongoing issue at this point. I think we've addressed it. Sometimes we get applicants in that and surveyors and whatnot that we haven't seen for a while. And they may try to submit something that's not very complete because they just want to get us on the agenda because years ago that's used to, how it was handled. But when we get applications now, I would say they're substantially complete. There's very little missing. Now, the one for the town hall, again, I'll bring that up because I had this whole section where they didn't include the original subdivision. And actually Barbara copied it and had made sure there was a copy for you folks. So in my opinion at this point, I don't think you have a real issue. I think, just like John explained, there are things that come up as we review it that we want to make sure and include as opposed to ignore or pretend it's not there.
Yeah, but Marsha, I think for me, I agree with Jeff. I mean, if I'm going to be, even though I'm retired, I'm in a retired life, I have a life. And if I'm going to be busy, on Monday or Tuesday, whatever, I'm going to do my homework on the weekend. And that's because I can't get to it before the meeting. So I don't want stuff showing up on Monday or Tuesday if if I can't review it.
Well,
so
how
it's
many
really
documents has Barbara had to email us prior to a meeting after the package has been put together? There's been a bunch of them.
Yeah, well, we were trying to get things out when we only had the 2 weeks in between. So yeah, they're small things, but we would never send you anything large that we expected you to act upon. I just don't want you to become too unreasonable because every time you slow down one of these applications, they back up behind it too. Remember that.
I certainly understand that, but
we try to be reasonable. Maybe we're being too reasonable, but we try to be reasonable and we're here to help the clients. That's what we're here for, the applicants.
And I know that not everyone's familiar with the process. We have to help. We have to check them through and be reasonable. But like Jeff says, if you've gone and got your package, you've reviewed it in detail, and then stuff come up in the meeting that that you didn't have time to review, it's an uncomfortable situation.
All right. So Jeff is going to draft up something you said, and we'll review that at the next available opportunity and see what we all think. And if we want to add that in at that point, we'll have that discussion.
All right.
Everyone on board with that?
Yep.
All right. Is there anything else we would like to discuss for adjourning?
Did you actually vote on the minutes?
We did.
You did? Okay.
Yep. Minutes were approved unanimously. The next meeting will be May 5th. Same forum as of now, unless things change and we are able to meet in person, but we'll plan on doing it again. Hearing no objections, the meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
And just a reminder, I'm still looking at the old thing. So